Testing.
There
Testing.
they go, yeah. Here,
Mayor Verapapa,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Deaton,
here,
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Sistarsik.
Here.
Councilmember Masalava.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda and waiver of full reading of resolution ordinances. By motion of the City Council, this is the time to notify the public of any changes to the agenda and/or rearrange the order of the agenda. Do we have any changes at this time?
I'd like to pull item E.
Pull item E from Mrs. Sarsik. Yes.
Yes, I have a potential conflict of interest with item E, in that the oil revenue recovery effort could have a material financial effect on a client of my employer, Crimson Pipeline. So I'll be abstaining from this.
Okay, thank you. You might have to remove yourself
Leave
from
the
the
room,
building. Okay. We have no presentations or recognitions at this time. We will move right into oral communications. At this time, members of the public may address the council regarding any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss or take action on any items not on the agenda unless authorized by law. Matters not on the agenda may, at the council's discretion, be referred to the city manager and placed on a future agenda. Those members of the public wishing to speak are asked to come forward to the microphone and state their name for the record. All speakers will be limited to a period of 5 minutes. Any documents for review should be presented to the city clerk for distribution. We may begin. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and staff, Sheriff Miller and a fine force that's represented here, and citizens. I have lived in Seal Beach. It's my 30th anniversary this month. Brought my family over here from Cyprus.
Could you please bring your microphone up closer to your mouth?
Certainly.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
My name is Tim Prangley. I live on Marine in Old Town. I always felt safe in Seal Beach. You've heard me say this before. My grandmother lived this last 10 years of her life, was able to walk anywhere. Bonds, pavilions, Main Street, church, and I felt totally safe having her alone. My children the same, and later on my grandchildren. Presence, patrols, and prevention have to be a theme and a priority, the priority for the city, for this council, and for its citizens, because everybody has responsibility. When the time comes to vote on anything, it's just like a school bond as far as I'm concerned. It gets my attention. I have not been experiencing anything but bike thefts. Okay, it happens, people with trucks. I was one of 11 people one night that had my car broken into. Yeah, it happens. It's a nuisance. But to have my grandson attacked twice, once on the beach, in broad daylight, with people around, him watching his surfer friends, have his skateboard ripped from him, knocked down, him turn around and see somebody running away in his hoodie, a bigger guy, couldn't identify him. To have my grandson again, 6 months later, have some teenagers, high school kids, attack him and his middle school friends and just hassle him and take his hat and throw it on top of Fun and Son. You know, that gets my attention because it could have been worse. But even more frightening is to have my son, who was taking care of our house and our dog while we were out of town, walking the dog down the street. He's a big-sized guy. He's 6'2", 220 football player. Have a bunch of teenage boys, and probably out-of-towners, zipping through the crosswalk and almost knocking him over, which my son reacted to, and them turning around and one of the gentlemen, I use that loosely, lifting up his shirt and showing a gun. These guys reacted immediately. I have nothing but praise for our police department. Nothing but praise. They caught him at Gaw, and they went into the system. They did their job. But it's not just up to them. It's up to all of us. You are like a Senate. Yeah, you should represent your districts. There is no question you should represent your districts. I have the greatest council person in the world, Ellery. She does a great job. but you got to represent the city. And if there's more major, I know we got serious financial problems, and it gets lost in the shuffle. But if you let this get lost in the shuffle, shame on you. That's criminal. I'm sorry, it is. You know, if you go through the various priorities and you don't place this number one in your minds, your hearts, and financially, and if citizens of this city, if they're asked to vote on something, put that in their minds and their hearts, you're hurting yourself, you're hurting your children, you're hurting your grandchildren, now and into the future. That's all I have to say. So I say, I'll repeat it. You have to think about presence, patrols, and prevention. And I appreciate seeing those pedagogos, once at least, on the street. I want to see those foot patrols on Main Street again, the beach patrols. And I want to see more patrols for the other districts with patrol cars going around. It's not his fault, the chief, or the men. Man, they put in hours, overtime. I know they put in overtime. They are understaffed. They're 25% down because of that council's decision. That's their legacy. What's going to be your legacy? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Mayor, council, members of staff, the public, Seth Heeker, resident of Old Town. First off, let me be clear, I am not representing any specific organization, though I will refer several of them from a historic and kind of long-term context. It's very clear to me, though I was unable to attend the city budget hearings, which looked like there was a tremendous amount of work that staff put in, that we're in a pretty desperate, dire financial condition, and I recognize that. I would echo the prior speaker's comments. Our public safety is of the utmost concern in our city, and I think we should continue to maintain that. I do, however, become very concerned when a discussion may be percolated about the idea of offsetting expenses to nonprofits that produce the majority of events in this town. So let me give you some examples. Run Seal Beach has given well over $1.5 million to this community where every penny is spent in this community. The Seal Beach Police Foundation has given hundreds of thousands of dollars to our police department. Some of the vests the officers wear, the foundation bought. We have provided direct value. We've produced the Safety Awards luncheon. The Lions took over Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and I hope you all attended those events because our chair, Art Fry, Pastor Tia Wildermuth, there was some magic that happened on that Memorial Day. It was powerful. And why did that happen? Because of the power of nonprofits. Eisenhower Park, I discovered, was funded from nonprofits. That entire parkland was generated from nonprofits. When the pier was damaged, who stepped in? Citizens and nonprofits. When the pool needed repair, who stepped in? Nonprofits and citizens. When the Centennial 2015 came, I was a co-chair. Some other people were chairs. Some are in the audience. There was a surplus we provided to Parks and Recreation beyond what you contributed. So I would make a very clear, compelling argument that the idea of pushing off costs from police for the Christmas parade, public works for the car show, facility rentals at zero cost for organizations like LOAD or the Women's Club. These organizations have existed for nearly 100 years. We're doing our 74th fish fry, July 20th and 21st. Lions Against Graffiti has removed thousands of dollars of graffiti at no cost to the city, which allows Republic to deliver less expensive services to the city. So again, to be perfectly clear, if you begin to charge nonprofits an expense account cost, that will make those nonprofits, in my opinion, consider, should we bother doing this? Let's abolish the Christmas parade because it's too expensive. It doesn't work. Let's get rid of these things because you're telling us that we can't partner effectively. Is there the possibility of compromise? Maybe. But I think those organizations that are 100% driven to help this city and our direct community, that have no overhead costs of any kind, you ought to think really hard about. And that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor
Hi there.
and City Council. Barbara Bright, longtime resident of Seal Beach. Today, I was with a group of women from my book club, and one of them lives in Huntington Beach, and she has macular degeneration. She's like 91 years old or something like that. And because she lives in Huntington Beach, they have a fabulous senior program, and I think you probably have all heard about it. The car comes and picks her up and takes her to a doctor's appointment so she can get shots in her eyes. And she was telling us all about the benefits of living in Huntington Beach if you're a senior. And I got to thinking about that, and I thought, you know what, we have benefits here in Seal Beach because our women's club is a philanthropic group, and we try to raise money, to give back to the community. And which this last year and previous years, we raised over $10,000 for our group, and that's really good. All the money goes right back into Seal Beach. We raise this money through giving Christmas boutique and plant sale, which the Lions have been so great about giving us a good place. And we have a tea every year. Well, a lot of these events we couldn't have. Oh, plus, I forgot, they give us the Mary Wilson Community Center 3 times a month on Wednesdays so that we can have bunco and meetings and our board meetings and our garden section, things like that. So this Seal Beach does help the seniors, and we know that. But we couldn't do all these things if I didn't write this grant every year so that we can get free use of Mary Wilson Library and the free use and the help of the rec department to set up our tea every year, which we couldn't possibly do by ourselves because we can't lift the tables anymore and that kind of thing. And I just don't want to see that disappear. And I know it's on the budget today. And I just hope you really think about this strongly, because all the money we make, and 8% of the money that we make goes back to the rec department for scholarships for kids that can't afford some of their programs. So the money we make goes right back to the city, either to the schools or to local charities. So please think strongly before you cut this from your budget, because you're helping seniors that way.
Thank you.
Good evening, Art Fry, Westminster. I'm part of the Seal Beach Lions Military Affairs Committee. First off, I want to say thank you all for your community service. I know it's not easy. And I want to say thank you, Mr. Mayor, for coming out and supporting our Memorial Day. It was a great day. It went well. I want to just put a face to what we do here at the Lions Club. I've been fortunate enough to be a Lion for a few years now, and it's probably one of the most fulfilling things that I've done. Community outreach, community service, giving back to your community. And you really don't realize how important it is till you do it. And you do it every day. Being up there, it's not easy. And putting together these events, I was christened, you are the new Military Affairs Committee chair, and given it, and figuring out the path of figuring out permits and how to do it, and understanding that the permit was granted through the city council, that we didn't have to pay for it. And I've done 2 events so far. We do the Veterans Day and Memorial Day. And I just wanted to put a face to where the permit's going and what we've done. We've had 2 great events. The first one was Veterans Day, and we did that with Grace Community Church. And you got to come out and speak, and it was a beautiful day with the music, the singing. We even had a flyover. It was accidental, but we had one. And the community outreach, the permit that we do get at no charge is important, and I deeply appreciate it, and I hope it can continue. And the Memorial Day that we just recently did, I was talking with a local gentleman here in town. Jim passed out over 250 American flags. And he's been doing that for the last 15 years. And 250 American flags, we had 100 chairs. We're like, well, next year we have to do 250 chairs. We're going to do more chairs. And I have some things that I'd like to do about, utilizing the park. But I think it's important for the club and the people that represent the club to come in and tell the council, thank you. This is what we're utilizing the permits for. This is what we're doing. And it's just a way to give back to the community. So thank you for your time, and thank you this evening.
Thank you. Good job.
Mayor, council, city staff, on behalf of the Police Officers Association and the Police Management Association, we'd like to thank you. Now that our contracts are behind us, we look forward to working with the city and the staff and assisting in finding future cost-saving measures during this difficult time. Lastly, both associations are thankful for the cooperative relationship that we have, and we proudly serve the community we all enjoy. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your service. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Greg Kirsty of MPA. For nearly 20 years, I've performed due diligence investigations and research, both financial and technical, across many industries. I possess an MBA, and I'm a degreed electrical engineer. I've researched the oil industry for numerous years. I've been granted a patent for an oil containment system, and I've been researching oil revenue recovery for municipalities for about 5 years. For Seal Beach, I've already recovered over $200,000 so far. My research indicates I can recover much more revenue for the city. That's one-time and ongoing revenue. The contract before you tonight is a research project. This is exactly what I do. This is the type of work that I do. The contract before you is a no recovery, no fee agreement, which means the city will not pay me any money if I cannot recover any fees, any money for the city. Although my research is not complete at this time, I believe I will be successful in recovering substantial money for the city. And I'm here tonight to answer any questions you might have.
I believe we pulled this item. Maybe we can discuss it then, if that's okay. This is
Perfect.
oral communication. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, staff, and those who are able to watch TV at home without the interruption of the NFL, when all the action will start here, I'm sure. At any rate, I wanted to just attend to one issue tonight that we've talked about. In the past, the city had strategy and goal-setting meetings that discussed the topic of oil and gas revenue, as you heard Mr. Kursky mention. During that meeting, council persons and staff members publicly stated there is only one consultant we want. A council member said getting the MPA approval was just a PR problem, just wait for the right time. I think the time is here. Council members will recall the city paid MPA on 2 contracts to discover potential oil revenue. MPA did find the revenue, just as Mr. Kirsty said, from one producer. Now MPA wants a new contract, and the numbers battered around about the unfound revenue amount to $10 to $12 million of overdue past MPA, which MPA contends the city is owed, as you heard. What about future revenue? Recently, comprehensive seismological work has been completed, and Synergy has publicly presented on several occasions a plan to do a lot of future drilling near the city. some operators could slant into the Hellman Bryant Signal Oil Operators location with the royalty owner's agreement in the future. Any new oil or gas projects would be included in MPA's 15% contingency contract for 7 years. Now, if the operator, that is, if the operator has, it can be included in this contract even if the operator has paid promptly over the years and continues to pay promptly. The MPA contract would include any future activity. It seems like the terms of the contract should only kick in if the operator didn't pay the barrel tax or the transportation fee on a timely basis. Some evidence of an operator avoiding their obligation should be necessary. For example, if they're 120 days late or other proof of evading tax. Most operators have willingly complied for decades. The city has a long record of fees paid by most operators. The wording of the proposed contract is like giving a royalty or a call option on to MPA for any future oil or pipeline fees the city finds regardless of the operator's compliance to the rules. The MPA contract does not appear to give the city any software the consultant would develop or the sources of information to the city, including working papers. Now, they could allow the city to look at a report, but it's not the same thing as having a document in the future for use or for reference. Remember, the staff and MPA publicly disagreed on the city having the data in MPA's contract, and they did that right here in the council meeting, as you heard. One said we did, one said we didn't have it. A lot of debate. Seems like a contract should include the provisions for the staff to monitor the consultant's progress dynamically. I was told that in other beach cities, junior staff learned the procedure in about 2 to 3 weeks working with a consultant. This reduced the city's expenditure significantly. It's a beach city pretty close to us. How hard is it for someone to obtain information on oil and gas operation in the city? Operators are required to report to the State Department of Oil and Gas the numbers of barrels of oil, gas, water monthly. Now, this information is available, as I've mentioned to the council numerous times, and given you sites, but it's available just to go on the website, type the city's zip code in to find wells, and any well, and the detailed history appears. A well near 4th Street, where I am, history going back to 1923, all the details, along with current details if it were an active well. Each month it's reported and available. Other junior
You have 10 seconds.
members of the staff have in other cities have found this. I'm wanting to save the city money. If this money is there, I'd rather have the city get it than pay it out on a contingency royalty. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see you. Scott Levitt, President of the Silver Beach Chamber of Commerce. Despite my attire, I'm here officially as the President of the Silver Beach Chamber of Commerce. I don't know all of the facts regarding the budget issue. Certainly there's rumors circulating about whether there would be cuts to certain community events that, as Seth Eaker pointed out, Lions Club and other various community groups do, including the Chamber of Commerce. We live being a partner with the city. So many of our events obviously could not happen without the city, and vice versa. These events wouldn't happen without the Chamber of Commerce. So if there is a consideration of cutting certain funds or in lieu of waivers as far as permits and things like that, of course the Chamber would implore you not to make those cuts. Our events are sort of what make Seal Beach unique, and we want to continue to have those events. The Chamber, of course, is looking forward to working with staff and the council to ensure that those events can continue. Again, I have no idea if those events are even up for discussion internally within the council. If those events are moving forward as planned for the next several years, then great. If it is getting that tight where you're looking at cutting community event type situations, just let us know. will reach out to you. Globally, it's tough for a budget crisis here in our city. It's a small town. Looking back, the council does control the budget greatly, although staff prepares recommendations. In the past, the council has voted to fund certain items that probably have cost the city hundreds of thousands of dollars in the past. I know recently we had litigation that cost several hundred thousands of dollars. The eminent domain case that was brought up several years ago with the DWP property. If the council wants to take a look a little bit about that history to see how much those expenditures cost the city, you can see how important it is that going forward, we take a look at the long-term effects of those types of expenditures, things like fire, police, safety, health care. Those are items that would be tough to be cut. But when we take a look at discretionary litigation that has happened here, I certainly implore you to take a look at how big those numbers are. And any other money that the city has that's discretionary, without maybe cutting out some of these community events, if those were on the table. Again, Scott Levitt, Chamber of Commerce, we're looking forward to working with you. If there's anything we can supplement for the shortfall, please do reach out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, we have someone's phone here that keeps dinging, and we don't know whose it is.
Maybe they left it by
I wonder
accident.
if it's the man that came.
Is this anyone's phone by chance?
I think it might be Tim Prangley's.
Can I give it to the, is he here still?
Is that the one that's making a beeping noise? Oh. I was going to blame one of you two over there.
Of course you were. Of course you were.
Okay. Next.
Hi, my name's Jonathan Waller, and after hearing everyone else speak, I'd like to reiterate some of the arguments, which namely about cutting certain services like Chamber of Commerce, nonprofit, and to me it seems kind of like what Seth said, the kind of the value that you provide, and the only way or only place that I don't see value provided is through our administrative staff. And having attended the budget meeting for 5 hours, I have a newfound respect for our city council members because it was like watching paint dry. But having sat through that, I noticed the one area that no one wanted to touch, the pink elephant in the room, was the wages. Everyone keeps talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, but the wages represent just over $14 million. And I'm not talking about all wages. Specifically, I am more interested in the people at the top. It seems recursive to cut the people at the bottom. And also, I'd like to reiterate Tim's argument that the police isn't an area where we should cut, and we've probably cut too much. And I can remember a time when I was younger when the police would drive around past 10:30 and find kids that have been after curfew and escort them home. Now that doesn't really happen because we don't have enough police. It seems counterintuitive. And yet at the same time, our administrative staff have been got raise after raise after raise. And one area in particular I would like to point out, which is probably not a popular issue, which our highest paid position is our city manager. And she is paid, well, I won't mention the values, but basically I looked at 479 cities posted by the state controller's office. This data was aggregated, and then I looked at cities. There's 92 cities that are population 20,000 to 40,000. That's us, we're 24,000. Then I compared coastal cities. There's 46 that are incorporated. The other communities that exist along the coast are amalgamated by other incorporated cities that take care of them. And any way that you cut it, statewide, the average city manager pays $197,000. Coastally, the average is $224,000. And ours is much higher than that. So I just think if we're always talking, and at the budget meeting, we discussed cutting the elderly, which Barbara Wright said is important to her, and I think, why are we cutting these areas when we should be looking at our administrative staff? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Ellen Stewart. I live on the hill on Seabreeze Drive. And last night there was a homeless person walking down the street with a cart and a crying cat. I saw him in the morning walking up the hill, and after dusk or after dark, I saw him walking the other way with a cat that was crying and suffering. I called the police to let them know that that was going on. But I wasn't accustomed to having homeless people up in that neighborhood. And I don't really like to feel that pressure with children and leaving the doors open for ventilation. And my garbage cans aren't exactly where I can see them until I get upon them. So, and every trash day now, there's people going through the garbage. And I don't want to go the way of Long Beach with the alleys. We don't even have alleys, so there's not as big of an excuse or way to hide from the pressure. And also I wanted to say, so I was aware of the budget crisis until today. And so it's, just like any other accounting equation, money coming in, money going out, or the boat sinking and you're bailing out water and it's not fast enough. But there are some responsibilities that come along with ownership or stewardship that I don't feel that are being taken seriously. So some things are not accidents. They're failure to plan, failure to repair, failure to maintain, and not taking the responsibility and the ownership, which is, as a whole community, the city council and the city manager are holding our trust and being in the know, and not just coming to meetings and hearing half of it, or not knowing what the other half is, or whatever percentage, or none of it. And some people, you can hire consultants. There's no reason that, like with the pumps and the pier, those weren't accidents, and you don't get the luxury of calling them accidents. They were failure to maintain vital equipment in vital parts of the city. So I just want to make that clear, that you don't get to classify your mistakes as accidents. And that's my comment for today.
Thank you.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor Joyce Ross Parquet, Old Town Seal Beach. We've had one election. Turnout was pretty good. We have another one coming up. 3. We have another election coming up. And believe me, we'll be out there knocking on doors. Because it is not our fault that you can't run the city. It's not our fault. It's hers and yours. This is a charter city. You're supposed to take care of all of us with the money coming in. All the taxes you're getting, look at all the work going over there at the eaves. They have to pay for all that. Look at the houses going up down the beach. It's not our fault. It's your fault. So there is an election coming up, and I want everybody to come out, because everything that happens in town, like the parade and the concerts, yes, it's not paid by you. And if the cops or the people have to come, I think we pay for them on the side. But it's not our fault. It's your fault. It's the way you have run it for 8 years. I'm finished. We're finished. And not only that, Mayor Vera Papa, tell me why you have to eat out all the time. Tell me why we have to have all this money spent now at the Cadelli Deli, and you have somebody go up there and drive and bring it back to you. And then we have the treasurer over there having interviews at Walt's Wharf. You remember all those meals that we counted up? We're counting them up again. And I went back and asked someone that was here in 2000, and no, there were no meals delivered to you guys. Now, it's time to take responsibility, because the pier, that lady's right, it was no accident. It wasn't an accident. And then the pool, how many times have we spent money on the pool? And the parking. How much money did the treasurer spend on parking and going to Florida? And the last time this oil thing came up with your friend, I guess that's the brother of your friend, he was going to get what? How much? For 20 years of what he found? was a whole lot of money. So there's going to be a lot to take into see how we're going to run this city different. And I remember one other time I asked you about Me Too, hashtag Me Too lawsuits. Well, now we have one on a calendar starting 5/24/18, sexual assault. And the names are there, and I know there's others. And if you don't come like the other cities, like up in Sacramento and in Washington, if somebody works here and gets into a sexual assault, or they need to pay for their own attorney. I don't want to pay for it. I'm not out there watching them, and you're not out there watching them, but I know there are others. But now I know for sure, and I don't know well, the names are there, but I'm not going to call out the names. But hashtag Me Too, we don't want to pay for it. And I know they're out there. You don't want to pay for it, you want to get elected. Okay, so the Cadelli Deli, and when Transparency California came up and I look at it, and thank Johnny for looking at it more than I do. But the other pay, I did request the other pay. And the chief, I got the chief's other pay on Monday, January 30th, 2017. I never brought this up.
You have 30 seconds.
The other pay was comp time, detective premium, float holiday payout. Is that what we're talking about, taking sick days or vacation days where you can take them and put them on your pension? Holiday pay, $8,940. Longevity, $19,763. Post, I don't know what a post is, $6,000. That is other pay. And if you look at Transparent California, everybody has other pay, other pay.
Thank you, and for the record, I haven't been to Catella Deli with anyone from the city, other than my family. I haven't been to Catella Deli or any other
No,
restaurants.
it was delivered to you. I've got a
for the
receipt right
record,
here.
I wasn't at.
It was delivered to you.
I haven't been out to dinner at any restaurants
At
except for with my
3:30.
family.
Well, who was it for then?
And I got the bill for that, thank you.
You got the bill, you paid it?
For my family dinners, thank you.
And how did it get on the business credit card? How?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
Hello, Council and Mayor. Jeannie Dennison from Old Town. I wasn't prepared to...
Jeannie,
Yes.
the mic.
Oh. Am I good now?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't prepared to speak, so I'm not going to be probably in a good, smooth transition here of conversation, but I really appreciate the previous speakers coming up, and everything they said was right on target. I really am disappointed with what's happened with the budget and the crisis we're in. I truly want the police supported and all the programs, but I'm sitting back here and I'm thinking to myself, I got to keep a budget to pay my bills in my house. Part of my bills are the bills I pay for the city here. I'm responsible to do that. Now I'm hearing potentially services are going to be cut that I pay for. So now all of a sudden I'm going to get less service, but I still have to pay the same amount. I don't think that's fair or right. If I got to maintain my budget to pay my bills and my house payment, and we work our butts off to do that, what did you do wrong here? You can't creep up on almost $1 million budget crisis and not know it's coming, giving out raises. You got to stop and take a look at what you're doing and be responsible. And if you're going to start cutting things, you sure better think about hitting the pause button on handing out raises. You need to put a moratorium on that outside of hiring police. And you need to think about what we do to support you, how our jobs and what we give up out of our incomes, and now you're telling us to sacrifice because you guys messed up. That's really, really disappointing, and I'm borderline speechless on what to say, because it's really unfair to us residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we will close the oral communication and move to the city attorney report.
No report this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. City manager report?
Yes, Mayor, I have one item tonight. We have a new battalion chief in Division 1, which, as all of you know, represents Seal Beach, and it's Battalion Chief Steve Hurdle. He's here with us tonight, so wanted to welcome him to our community and give him an opportunity to come up and introduce himself to the council and the community.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, city staff. Steve Hurdle, I've worked with OCFA for 33 years. Today is my first day as a battalion chief. So excited to work for Chief Acosta, having me come up here to represent Seal Beach and the other communities. Worked with Jill when she was at the OCFA, so very proud, very honored to be here. I've worked in the city on and off over the years. My last event was the car show with the Chamber of Commerce. Real proud to be part of that, and looking forward to a great future here in Seal Beach. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Welcome.
That's all I have.
Thank you. We'll move to council comments. I'll start on my right with Council Member Masalavit. Do you want to?
I just want to remind everyone, and I'm not sure of the dates, so please pay attention to the website. There's a hazard mitigation plan that the city is preparing with the Navy base, and we've had a couple of meetings, and they're interactive. You get these little dots, and you get to put them in the places you think are important, and the issues that you think are important. And the next meeting is in a couple of weeks on the 27th. Thank you. On the 27th at Station 48. So if you can at all possibly be there, that would be really helpful for everyone. And I'd like to just comment on the homeless issue. It's something that's been building for decades, and what has really exacerbated it is, in my mind, these are all my own thoughts, is the chronic homeless versus the newly homeless. The families that are living in their cars that have just been evicted. They're much different. They have a whole different work ethic than people who have been on the streets much of their life. So you can't put them in a ball and roll them up and think that they're all the same. So please keep that in mind when you're thinking of homeless and homeless families. Maybe the County of Orange will be coming up with a comprehensive plan on homelessness at the urging of Judge Carter. And I'm hoping myself that things can only get better. It's gotten pretty bad, and we really do. Those of us who have a house with a roof over our heads, maybe a paycheck coming in or a retirement check, we're the lucky ones. We haven't been evicted. But those that can't afford it have a really hard time, and they're the ones that become homeless. And now I will get off my... Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councilmember Sestarsik?
Good evening. I did attend the local hazard mitigation plan community meeting that was held 2 weeks ago here in this chamber. It was sort of lightly attended, so I'd like to encourage all of you to turn out for the next meetings to give your input and your dots on areas that you think are the most important for our hazard planning. I attended also a parking town hall meeting, and thank you to Commander Bowles and Ms. Dixon for giving us an update on the parking planning situation. I attended an OCTA public meeting last week about the 405 project. They were giving the community an update on which bridges are going to be worked on and how the roads were going, or the construction is going to work. They told me that eventually they're going to put something on the website so you'd be able to click on and view the presentation. It was mostly some posters and about a 20-minute slideshow. There will be one this coming Thursday night from 6 to 8, but it's down at Orange Coast College, and that'll be their final community outreach meeting. I also went on a tour of the OC35 construction site. This is a site where we're paying to tunnel under the 405 to replace a water line. So they had their pits and their big grinding machine, and it was really very interesting. So anyway, thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Councilmember.
Yeah, I have two things to say. The first one is the DWP property closed escrow today. So I would like to welcome Shea Homes into our community. They will be the builders of the homes there. And as you know, we negotiated that the park will be done at no cost to the city, and it will be handed over turnkey before the first house is sold over there. So 6.5 acre park is actually going to come. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that the police officers on bikes, we are so appreciative of those, but I wanted to tell everyone that our community has pulled together to get those bikes for our community. The Police Foundation, the Lions Club, the Run Seal Beach. Who am I missing, Seth?
Jim and Judy Watson.
Jim and Judy Watson.
The Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce.
That's the 5.
Those are 5 people. They were very expensive bikes. And if anyone was at my coffee a couple weeks ago or last week, I don't know, time flies, you would have heard the story about how somebody just blew them off because they were on bikes and they could run faster. They didn't know. Those Pedigo bikes go 25 miles an hour. So they just cruised on up next to him, and he says, okay, you got me. So anyway, just wanted to tell you, the Pedigo bikes, we very much appreciate them. We thank everyone for the donation, and we thank the police department for once again getting our officers on bikes and out into the neighborhoods where they need to be seen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore?
I went to a JPIA training conference last week. Included about 20 council members from around California. And they had the city managers, mayors, and lawyers give courses on how to handle different situations as a council member. This is for newly elected council members, but I missed last year. So it was nice to get a refreshing on how to deal with a lot of different situations. I also want to thank the Lions and the Chamber of Commerce for coming and being here. And I don't think anyone wants to get rid of any events. And I think that we want to just open the discussion with the community to try to work that out. So thanks.
Thank you. I attended the health fair last weekend. Thought it was very well attended. Great event. Thank you to all the nonprofits that put that on and all the volunteers. I know my daughter and her friend had a great time with the Zumba instructor that was dancing. I heard she was up there in her age, and she was sure moving a lot, so good job with that. I did spend a lot of time in town on Sunday. I think both chiefs will be busy with the summer starting. It seemed like it started yesterday. I'm not sure how you felt, but the beach was busy, Main Street was busy, the pier was busy, Pacific Coast Highway was busy. The whole town was just a buzz in a good way. So keep up the good work, and we're here to support you. So thank you. All right. right, we will move to the consent calendar. This is for items A, B, C, D, and G. Do we have a
Move
motion?
approval.
Second.
Please vote.
I'm sorry, did you say include item F? Or did I mishear you?
You're right.
A,
A, B,
F,
C,
and G.
D, F, and G.
You just have one
Okay.
pulled, yeah.
Just pull G, okay. E. Please vote. Passes 5-0, thank you. Okay, item E was pulled
I'm going to
by
excuse myself.
Councilmember Susarsik, and Councilmember Moore will be excusing himself at this time. Do we have a staff report? Or do we need a staff report?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I'll turn this item over to our Finance Director, Vicki Beatley, and also, as you know, Greg Kirsty, the recommended consultant, is in the audience, too, to answer questions. Vicki?
Thank you, City Manager Ingram, Mayor, members of the council. So as you are aware, there's an item on the agenda tonight for the potential recovery of oil-related revenue. And just as a bit of a summary, back in February of 2017, a request for qualifications and quote was sent out to several oil consultants. In March, we had a study session where we received a presentation from Ken Ramos from Millennium Consulting. At that time, the council asked us to cast a wider net, and so city staff received an additional proposal. There was no movement forward after that second proposal was received, so we haven't done anything until this evening. In October of 2017, Municipal Petroleum Analysts sent an unsolicited proposal to the City Council. At that time, city staff began again working with MPA, and the resulting agreement is on the agenda this evening for consideration. So the following are highlights of that agreement. It is a no-cost agreement. Revenue will be used, any revenue generated by this agreement will be used to repay the swimming pool designated fund first for any costs associated with policing that the council authorized previously. If the city council chooses not to pursue revenue identified after the revenue recovery is validated, the consultant will receive an hourly rate payment for the time invested in bringing the idea to city staff, and the payment streams will be no longer than 7 years. So the agreement is for 5 years, but the payment streams identified in this agreement will be for 7 years. So a couple of additional things. One of the public speakers commented that there wasn't any mechanism for ensuring that the work being done by the consultant information is being provided to the city. So in the agreement under the scope of services, section 1.5, consultants shall provide periodic reports of its activities in a form and substance to be directed by the city's director of finance to the city at 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months following the effective date, and semi-annually each year after during that term, not later than June 30th and December 30th of each year. So there is ongoing reporting that is required to come to me, and that information will be shared with the City Council. Also, some of the council has heard this before, but one of the things that I think about as the director in bringing this item forward is 85% of something is 100% more of something that we didn't have. And while there might be some disagreement on whether or not this is a good contract for the city, in my opinion, it is a good contract for the city, primarily because there's no expense to the city. And even if there is revenue streams identified, there's no payment to the consultant until revenue comes into the city. And we believe now that this is in the best interest of the city. And with that, my presentation is completed. You know Mr. Christie is here to answer any questions, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Councilmember Susarsik?
Yeah, I had some questions as I was going through the proposal, and I didn't get the professional service, didn't get to see that till this afternoon, so I'm sorry I still had a few questions. So the contract is for 5 years, it's till 2022, that's?
Correct.
3.5 years, or is it retroactive, or?
No, it's 5.
Is that 5?
That's 5.
That's
Well,
5?
because when we first started the agreement, it was written back in
It was
December.
5. It's
Yeah,
when it
so
was 5.
yeah.
Okay.
Actually, about
Okay.
4.5.
Yeah, it's 4.5
I was just wondering
now.
if I was counting right.
Yeah.
I was,
No.
okay. And this, I had a question also about the contingent payments based on new revenue actually received by the city. The way that's stated, I had sort of the same question as Mr. Bennett, that does that mean that Mr. Kirsty would have to identify the revenue, or if it just happened to come up, then is he entitled to a contingency on that?
Oh, no, it would absolutely be that he would sit down with city staff, he would identify revenue, we would sort of put it on a record-keeping list, and then he would go ahead and have authorization to pursue the revenue. So, for example, if it's something to do with a barrel tax by one of our producers that we already are getting revenue from, that's not part of this agreement. This is new revenue, new sources of revenue that are coming in and being identified specifically by the consultant.
And that's spelled out in the payment schedule, which is Exhibit B to the contract, and the definition of contingent fee services is the, paraphrasing, new revenue, and sources of revenue, and then quoting, that are identified by consultant services, approved in advance by the city manager for collection by the consultant, and actually received by the city. So it's revenue that's identified by the consultant services, it's approved by the city for collection, and actually received is what he would get a contingent fee on, not the ongoing revenue, for example, that we're already
That
getting.
wasn't, I was thinking about the synergy, the bump of beach oil, mineral petroleum that is going on in Long Beach with the land swap and the wetlands. And if they made a contract with Hellman to slant oil and draw oil, that would be money that would be owed to us. But if we might well be aware of that, so that's what I was concerned about is
For each one of the sources of revenue that are contemplated by the agreement, there's, as the finance director stated, essentially a meeting that's going to occur to say, is this new revenue that you're approved to go out and collect? Or is it revenue that we already get, or revenue that we already know we're entitled to? For example, there's there are sources of revenue that come into the city right now. Only those sources of revenue that are new, that the city didn't know about, that are identified through this consultant services and approved in advance, would be those that he'd get paid on. Not stuff that we already know is going to be due, or that we come to know in the future as a city would be coming due without the consultant's work.
Okay. I was also concerned about another section where, let's see if I can find what it is. It also says with city permission, I guess, when is requested in the consultant, when requested in writing, to negotiating with parties seeking drilling rights, pipeline franchises, abandonment sites, make testing, surveying, mapping, and well stimulation permits. I appreciate that this man has been in business for 5 years, as he states, but I was just looking for information on the internet. I could not find the company listed on the Secretary of State's website. I Googled and I found two sites in addition to one that the Sun had written from the city of Carson, where I guess he did some pipeline auditing and things in Carson. And I'm just thinking that, some of the other contracts that or some of the other proposals we were shown had extremely well-qualified people, and that seems like you're putting a lot of trust and faith into somebody who, may not, to me, may not seem to be quite as qualified. So I was concerned with some of that. I was also concerned with the possibility of, if something's identified and then the city manager I'm not sure if it's city manager, the city decides not to pursue something, and then we would have to pay for his hours that were spent on that. I see from the staff report, there's already a great number of hours, spent already, so I wasn't sure what our costs, if we decided something was going to be legally difficult or whatever, that there could be a great cost to us for ending up with no revenue out of that. So is that clear, or am I not making myself clear? I'm not sure.
Is there a legal fee associated with the?
There would be an hourly fee under those circumstances where, for whatever reason, the city council decides to compromise an amount or to not pursue an amount.
To not pursue something. We could still end up with a bill.
We could still end up with a bill if you make the decision to not pursue something that's been identified and approved for whatever reason. Staff, I will say candidly, in the discussions about this contract with the contractor, couldn't really identify a realistic situation where we would do that and get down the road of having had it identified, having enough documentation to have it approved, and then say, well, no, we're not going after it. But that's built in. That's the mechanism that's built into the contract.
It's in the agreement.
Yeah, but as to the question about work that's already been performed, there's no contract. The city wouldn't be paying for work that was done, whatever it was, prior to the time that you enter into a contract if one is approved.
I also spoke to someone who'd been in the oil industry for 30 years, and they told me that contingencies are not common at all. And so I was a little concerned about that. Why we not be better off just going with a straight, as in Carson, his contract in Carson, he was just paid for his time. There was no contingency on that contract. Also, we've had two contracts. The second contract, I think, was an audit, and I haven't seen anything from that. This contract, to me, just seems like it could be the same thing, except there's a contingency here, and that's concerning to me, since I don't really know what he's found. I mean, I promised the voters that I would try to be transparent, and I would try to be fiscally responsible, and I don't really see transparency here. And while this may be good for the city in the short run, that we don't have to pay money up front, in the long run, if he actually has identified all this money, we're still giving away 15%. So anyway, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to support it. So thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Or questions?
No.
No?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Just trying to think through.
Okay.
I don't know what can be more transparent than the process we've been through, so I don't understand the transparency issue. That seems to me a word that we throw out whenever something's not the way we want it to be. I don't understand the transparency. I don't understand how, when someone's not going to charge you anything and they have 5 years of experience to go out and get it, and somebody that has 30 years of experience says they don't know if there's anything there, but give me $250,000 and I'll check for you, but they don't get a contingency. I just don't see the downside here. If the big deal is that we're worried that he's locked into a 5-year contract, we have an opt-out anytime we want it. We just say, nope, we've changed our mind, we're not going there. We're not locked in, our hands aren't tied. I don't get it. We need the money, and we can't afford to pay somebody to go out there and start from ground zero. If Greg Kirsty is wrong and there's nothing there, we're nothing out of pocket. If Greg Kirsty is right, now we have some ongoing large amounts of dollars to work with, and we don't have to go out and say tax, tax, tax. If tonight we turn this down, what we are saying is we are, yes, going to cut your service, and yes, we're going to go out and tax, tax, tax. I have absolutely no idea, after listening to all of the arguments for and against, what the downside of zero money out of pocket and having somebody, after we have approved it and said, yes, this is the money we want you to go after, and then they go after and find it, and they get 15% of that for 7 years. And if we don't like the job he's doing tomorrow or a week from tomorrow, we can say, we've changed our mind, we don't want this contract anymore. I honestly cannot see the downside, and I've tried, because I've read the emails that have come out, most of them wrong, saying that we're locked in for too long and so forth and so on. Why someone would not want us to go out and at least try to get the money that's owed to us is beyond me, and I will vote on this tonight, and I will vote yes, because I think we owe it to our taxpayers to do so.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. The whole thing with the not paying him unless he produces is valuable. I don't know that we've ever worked with a contractor in the past that said, if I don't do the job, I don't get paid. This is the first time I've ever heard of that. And I'm willing to go along with this contract because of what we need. And the people, the companies that are out there gaining revenue from what's underground in Seal Beach and hasn't paid the taxes on it, we need to know who they are, and they need to catch up. And I don't see a downside to that at all. Pay up, and we'll be happy and we'll leave you alone. And I'm going to vote yes for this. I just can't.
I'd like
It's not
to.
up for a motion. I
I'd
don't
like
think
to
we're
move
done
the
with
approval.
comments yet.
Well, we can always make a motion, and I make a motion that we approve it, and if I get a second, we can finish with
It's up for
discussion.
It's up for discussion.
That's right, I make a motion that we approve it, and if I
Second.
have a second, now you can continue the
We continue
discussion.
this discussion. You know, my problem is, and concern is, we talked about this at the strategic planning meeting a couple years ago. We talked about having other companies looking at different options, looking at a comparison of cost, and looking at the big picture of this. It's quite disappointing that we're in 2018 and we don't even know who all the oil companies are in Seal Beach. And that's not, and I'm not blaming anybody on here. I'm talking 10, 15, 20, 50 years ago. This has been going on for a long time. But I think we owe it to our residents to look at the big picture here. 15% has never been discussed in any manner that I'm aware of. We haven't done any other contracts like that. 15% of $1 million is $150,000. 15% of $2 million is $300,000. 15% of $10 million is $1.5 million. That's our revenue. And you can't say that there's no fee. We've already paid fee for 2 different contracts. There might be back billing if it's terminated. That's a fee. There's a $200 cost an hour. And the other thing I really appreciate from staff in the past is when we obtain consultants or contractors, we get these RFPs, and they're beautifully written and described. And I always ask, and the thing I always rely on, because I'm not an expert in anything per se, but what has the consultant worked on before? And I've asked this before, resume-wise, background-wise, equivalent contract-wise, whether it was the pool contractor who worked on a boatload of pool contracts, class and comp consultant that had so many cities. It was 2 pages full of cities. The police study report that cost some money. The company had all these firms that they worked with in the past. The meter consultant, I mean, as unimportant as people think that may be, the person had a resume that was substantial, not just, here's the resume, it's 1 sheet. I worked on your job and I have another contract. I don't see anything that says what I've done, where I've worked, who are my customers, who are the cities I work with. And I mean, to me, that's a big part of it, because I don't have that expertise, and I know a lot of us don't have that expertise. And this is a big issue. This isn't small pocket change that we're talking about. This is big money that we're going forward with. And we've talked about this. It hasn't been like we haven't talked about this before. We talked about getting consultants and looking at people. We have Huntington Beach, Long Beach, Signal Hill. There's big oil there, big oil. One of the firms, Clark and Green, has worked in Seal Beach. They worked in Long Beach. They worked on all these, Beverly Hills, Hermosa Beach, Newport Beach. And that's the easy cheat sheet that I kind of look for in the small pictures. What have you been working on lately? Or what have you been doing in the last 20 or 30 years? And on top of that, the 15% just kind of, I just don't feel comfortable with that. I think it's a bigger issue and more important issue than that. And I would propose, a compromise. Clark and Green are offering a $45,000 fee to look at some of the revenue recoveries. I mean, not a drop in the bucket, but makes sense to me. Give them the $45,000. They're a very, very competent company. I haven't talked to them, but just looking at them and looking at what they've done, PhD and all this degrees and work experience on local issues. They've done it before. I would say do the $45,000. If they don't recover anything, let's move on to Kirsty and see what he can bring. But let's give the $45,000 a chance and see what they get, because 15% of anything is a lot. And we're not doing that on any contracts that I'm aware of, and I don't think it's a good practice to start. So,
okay, so with that, I'd just say, where are you going to get the $45,000? We don't have it. Right now, we're coming tonight, and we're talking we're going to have to start, where do we start? 140 something tonight? Okay, that's where we start tonight. Is in the hole 100 and whatever.
So if we
and
find
so
the
we're going to pay somebody $45,000 so they can tell us yes or no, there's not oil there. Mr. Christie said for nothing, he already knows there's oil there, he knows where it is, and he'll go get it.
He knows there's oil there. He knows how much money potentially there is there. Why don't we have Clark and Green look into that? They're going to determine recovery opportunities identified.
Vicki, you want to talk about...
They're going to look at potential slant drillers. They're going to look at, pipeline franchise agreements.
And how long are you going to have them look at this?
Whatever
because we have statutes of limitations
Do you want
that
to
are
give them
also
7
working
years?
here. He doesn't have 7 years. He has a 5-year contract to collect.
Whatever the contract specifies. I'm not
To
going to write the
collect.
contract tonight.
To collect. He has already done the
If you want to give them a
investigation.
timeline, I'm open for a timeline.
What does that mean?
6 to 12 months? How long would you like to give them?
Well, I think we have to call Greg up here to talk about that.
Well, it's not his contract.
But
Are
it's
we
his
going to
contract.
negotiate a contract at the dais here tonight?
I think we
I
can
wasn't
find
planning
out
on
if
it.
he's amenable to that. What's the problem?
None? Just curious
Okay.
what you have in mind?
Well, I think we can sit here and talk about ideas, but if he's not amenable, then it's not an idea. What do you think? Greg, could you just come step to the microphone?
Well, there's obviously has been said tonight. Almost all of it has been incorrect.
Can you lift your mic? We can't hear
I
you.
was saying that most of what I've heard tonight is incorrect.
From what standpoint?
It's from the comments that have been made, the opinions that have been provided, the knowledge that has been discussed is all based upon people's opinions rather than facts. So we can address each issue. So for example, there is no payment to MPA if something is not found. Contrary to what we've heard from the public, they don't really have a lot of understanding about what the Synergy project is all about. They don't understand the contract, the way it's drafted. They also don't understand, how we're paid. The other comment was, they also don't understand that this is really not a go and look up some database in the state and find some information and then just go ahead and get paid for it. That's not this. This is complex mixture of research, investigation, and legal. And you have to have understanding of all those areas to be able to identify and recover revenue. It's not something that a staff member can do. It's not something that most anybody can do. That's what I've been doing for 20 years, is research, complex, deep research, investigations, and due diligence. This is not simply looking at a state database and pulling some information out about who are oil companies in the city. Contrary to one other comment I heard was, we're not paid for something the city already knows about. The process is simple, like Vicki pointed out. I have an idea. This is where I think the revenue is. I present it to the city. If it's something they've already known, then it's hands off, it's theirs. If it's something they don't know about, I still have to have approval from the city manager to go after it, to do further research. I come back frequently and give my findings, and they decide what they want to do. That's simply how it works. The proposal I put forth was not is a contingent contract. I only get paid if I find something. It was also non-exclusive. That is, if you want to hire someone else along with me, that was fine. I would be happy to be paid by the hour, by the project, or contingent, which I recommended given the city's finances. This is all based upon research that I've done on my own time. I believe that I will be successful. There's still more research that has to get done. I wouldn't get paid for past research, as your city attorney pointed out. That's not recoverable. It's on my dime. I've come to the city in good faith, and I've said, hey, I think not only have I found you $200,000, which, by the way, no one else has been able to do. I was the only person who was able to find money for the city. I believe, based upon my research, that there's more money to be found. It's not something that's in my back pocket. It's not something I'm hiding. I've been extremely transparent. Probably no one's been more transparent than myself in this process. I'm constantly trying to get people to communicate with me, to meet with me, so I can explain what I've done in the past and what I plan on doing in the future. This contract is actually very simple. Is that my job is to go out and find money for the city. If I find money for the city, I get a normal and customary 15% fee. That's more than normal and customary. It's not an odd number. It's not high. I've even provided examples of other city contracts. I believe the city of Seal Beach might have a contingent fee agreement with other consultants in the financial area.
None of those contracts were oil related, I don't think.
No oil related ones.
Yeah, none of those were.
But
oil.
You have them in the financial
None
areas.
of those were. Okay, so you put the
Yes.
information.
Most people don't
provided-
do oil-related, contingencies because most people get paid by the hour by the project, which I'd be happy to do if that's what
In
the
all
city
due
would prefer.
respect, if this is an RFP, we would look at the cost and the resume or the previous work that was done, and your costs are higher per hour, and your resume, I didn't see a resume. I mean, I saw a page that said that you were Vice President of Corporate Development, Vice President at Whitcore, Wisconsin Energy, Research Engineer at Northrop Grumman, Principal of Municipal Petroleum Analysis, and Chief
CFO.
Financial at the other
CFO.
group.
So all of those
I mean, I
things-
get that, I mean, that's good, but
All of those things are right over the plate of exactly what the city needs to find to do the type of work that I'm doing. You don't need to be in the oil industry for 40 years and drilling wells to understand oil. Now, I have had experience in the oil industry, not 30 years, but 5 years. I'm the only person that's recovered.
What year did you start with the city of Seal Beach?
Probably 2013.
So 5 years ago.
So about 5 years ago. So I said about 5 years ago.
And as far as you're aware, there haven't been 15% contingencies on oil contracts.
I don't know of any other city that does oil.
Well, I
I
wouldn't
don't know
wanna
of
be
any
the
other company that does
first.
15% contingency.
I wouldn't
fee
want to be
period.
the first.
Pardon me?
I wouldn't want to be the first.
Why?
It's again, I'm happy to work by the hour.
Because there's a lot of money involved, for
I'm
one
happy.
thing.
I'm happy to. With all due respect, I'm happy
Well,
to
it
work
sounds
by
like we're
the
going
hour.
to be leaving the oil in the ground and we don't have to worry about it at all.
Happy to work by the hour. I'm also happy to work by the project. I've offered the city to also work on contingency basis, but either one of those is fine.
Well, by the hour, you're more expensive too.
Depends on how many
So I'm
hours it
just
gets.
looking at the apples to apples. I'm not.
How much is
bringing up-
how much is a typical
Well, it's
person?
in the.
I have mine's $200 an hour. I think that's
I
probably
think it was
more than typical.
150. So, with the contingency of 15%.
No, that would be
So
just, no,
if
that
we
wasn't.
went
Well,
for 40
just be clear. That was not. That was one or the other. That wasn't a contingency fee and an hourly rate. It was just an hourly rate, or a project fee basis, or the contingency fee basis. Either one of those is fine.
Was Carson a contingency basis?
That was fixed.
Fixed.
And so for that one, I did the largest oil pipeline audit that's ever been done in the South Bay.
And
So
you
no
already-
one else has ever done that. No one else has found what I found, and no one else probably could find what I found.
We had 2 contracts with you already.
That's correct. And I found you $200,000.
And the second contract founded.
That was a rollover from
That
the
was
first
the first
contract.
one or the second one?
The second contract was a rollover from the first contract.
So a lot of time was spent.
So you spent $40,000, I think a total of $40,000, and you got $200,000 back.
Okay.
That was probably one of the best returns the city's ever gotten.
Okay, so
Now, what I'm suggesting right now is a free contract. It's entirely free unless I find something. And if I find something, I'm paid a normal and customary fee. If you prefer to do it as a per-hour basis, that is fine. If you want to do it by the project, that's fine also.
is there back billing in charge?
There's no back billing in charge.
If it's terminated?
No.
If it's not terminated? Well, I would propose that we do the Clark and Green for $45,000. And if it doesn't pan out in 6 months to a year, we go with MPA. That would be
We have a motion on the floor.
I'd make a motion to
Yeah, you
go,
want a substitute motion?
substitute motion for Clark and Green for $45,000 for the recovery.
I will second that.
And just to clarify, that would have to be to direct staff to bring a contract back, negotiate a contract to bring
Okay.
it back.
Great.
So you're going to spend $45,000
Yep.
to go look for oil.
Or 15% of $1 million, so.
Okay.
If you don't have any further questions for Mr. Kirsty, I'd suggest.
I have none. Does anyone else have any questions?
I think the question that I wanted to ask you, Greg, was would you, first of all, you and the attorney, so in the current contract as it's given to us now, can we also, at the same time, have another company working on the same process at the same time?
You do whatever you like. You can do it.
So this is not an exclusive
Never
contract. Anybody can go out there and look for it and bring that. That's one thing. And then the way the contract is written right now, it's a 5-year contract. Would you be amenable to a 1-year contract?
Sure.
Okay. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
No, my concern partly was that there was a second contract where we got one result out of the first contract, we got no result out of the second contract, and now there's knowns or suspecteds out there. It's just a little disconcerting.
Well, may I say that we knew that all along. At the time when his contract was ended, at that time, he told us, it's out there, now I need a contract to go get it. That was, he did the investigative part. The The one we want to pay the $45,000 for, he's already done. Am I correct or incorrect? That the investigation was the second contract. He said, I'm done with the investigation. Now I need a contract to go and collect. And what we've got is a motion on the table now to pay someone else $45,000 to go do what Greg's already done, and Greg's ready to move forward with the collection. This is a collection and further investigation. I don't think there was any lack of transparency there whatsoever. The $200,000 was brought in. After that, he was contracted to look for more. That contract ended. We were in controversy at the time, which, if you ask me, that is what this is all about, is nothing to do financially. It's all about the controversy that erupted at that time. And when that, he came and he said, my contract's up. I need another contract now to go collect. And this, it's been actually quite seamless, except we haven't been able to move ahead.
I'm just looking back to the oil special meeting workshops or whatever we had, where the city, and I'm pretty sure this is after that, recommended Millennium, and we were looking at signing a contract with Millennium Oil. And at the end of that meeting, some of the community had said that we have a lot of people who with a lot of knowledge about oil, a lot of people with experience, and I think it may have been you that suggested we kind of broaden our scope and look.
And we did.
And then I personally heard nothing until December. We were thinking about coming back with this, and then nothing, and then we were ready to go with Millennium, and all of a sudden we're back to MPA. So that's where what I'm talking about in transparency. It's like, where, you know.
Well, I was never ready to go with Millennium when we brought that up. That's why I asked to go out and look at other things. They wanted $250,000.
But
we don't have $250,000.
We also discussed doing things kind of piecemeal,
Yes.
looking at the municipal code, looking at an audit, and I don't see a problem. I'm not recommending that we go with $250,000 to go with some consultant. I think you can do things piecemeal too, and learn as you go, and maybe refine. You
I
don't
think it's
have-
time to go get the money. I think it's time to go get the money. I don't think it's time to play with the municipal code and have somebody do some more research. I think it's time to get the money. And if we can contract with somebody on the side at the same time we have Mr. Kursky going out to get the money, that's fine if we can get to the bottom of tonight's budget and figure out where we're going to make up $145,000 and then add another $45,000. I don't mind doing that concurrently.
If we are so positive that we have money out there, then why have we spent a year and a half?
I agree. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. We should have given Mr. Kirsty the contract a long time ago. So.
Okay, there's a motion on the table.
Yep. You wanna
A
restate it?
substitute.
Could you
motion
restate what we're voting on?
To have staff look at a contract for the $45,000 with Clark and Green for a 6 to 12-month period. And if that doesn't pan out, we go with MPA. Is that clear? Please vote. Two.
Fails.
So it goes nowhere.
So we have another contract on the, another motion on the table.
Do you want to restate it?
I would like to give Mr. Kirsty the what's the word I'm looking for?
Non-exclusive.
Non-exclusive contract to go out and get the money he believes is there. If and I'll add to that we will reduce the term on the contract to 1 year and direct staff to negotiate the contract down to 1 year, give him 1 year to go out there and get it, and anybody else who wants to go out there and get the money along with him or look at it can go ahead and come in and get a contract at the same time.
So you would need the second,
I already have a second.
I'm seconding, yeah.
with the
Please
amendment?
vote.
You'll
Yes,
second with the amendment?
I second the amendment.
2-2.
Okay, I don't know how we explain it to the public, but
This is very
that'll be the,
disappointing.
It's
yeah,
truly is perplexing.
Thank you.
yeah.
Truly
Very
is.
disappointing.
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on.
To walk away from that money. How could,
I don't,
you're just for free.
I don't know. Can't explain it, don't understand it.
We have another motion,
Decision.
or another public hearing.
We need to get Councilmember Moore back
Oh.
in the room.
Thank you. Okay, we'll have a public hearing for the next items. City Manager?
Yes, Mayor, I turn this item over to our Finance Director, Vicki Beatley.
Thank you, City Manager Ingram. Tonight, we have before you for consideration the approval of the annual assessment for the Seal Beach Street Lighting District Number 1. This is a process that we go through annual, and what it does, if the council votes to approve, it authorizes the consultant Will Dan to place the assessments for the street lighting district on the property tax bills in the city. As part of the attachments, you have an engineer's report that defines the benefit for which each type of property will receive from the street lighting assessment district. And I have Mr. Tony Thrasher, who's the project manager from Will Dan Financial Services, here with us this evening if the council has any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the council?
No, not from me. No. It's pretty straightforward.
Seeing none? I see none.
To go to the public hearing then.
Public hearing is now open. Are there any comments? Street lighting? Is there a motion for the adopting Resolution 6831?
So move.
Second.
Second.
Please vote. Motion passes 5-0. Item J, public hearing and adopt Resolution 6832 establishing...
Aye.
Aye, I'm sorry. Public hearing and adopt Resolution 6832 establishing new fees and charges for goods, services, and facilities provided by the city and amending and restating the fiscal year 2018-19 cost recovery schedule.
Yes, Mayor, again, this item will be presented by our Finance Director, Vicki Beatley. Vicki?
Thank you, City Manager Ingram, Mayor, and members of the council tonight. You also have in front of you for consideration the annual cost recovery, what we have renamed from the Master Schedule of Fees and Charges. Over the last several years, there's been an increasing sentiment that government should be run more like a business. In order to be run more like a business, the city needs to charge more for the services provided to the end users. As I've stated on several occasions over the past several months, we can no longer be afraid to charge the actual full cost of providing the service. Fortunately, there is no profit motive in government, so we cannot charge any more than the reasonable cost for providing the service. That being said, the fees have been adjusted either by the Consumer Price Index or based upon changes in staff costs. Even with these changes, many fees are still far below the full cost recovery. There is both a red line version and a clean version of the document so that any specific changes can be addressed or discussed. And the full cost recovery will be and finally, full cost recovery is one of the strategic planning items that the council adopted at the last meeting. So we'll address having an updated cost allocation plan sometime in the near future. That being said, that completes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Any questions on this side?
I do. This takes effect July 1st.
Correct.
Do you have an estimate in terms of cost of what the increased costs will result in terms of budgeting?
Let me see if I understand the question.
How much are we going to get back?
Okay, so with this particular presentation that you have before you for consideration, the estimated additional revenue is about $300,000. About $240,000 is from the general fund and about $60,000 or so from the Tidelands funds. So ideally, what will happen is the revenue will come in more than that, but there's, based upon our past history and sort of my knowledge of what's going on in the next year, this is how the fee increases have been put into the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I had a couple of questions. Looking at some of these false alarms, charges going up, the beach parking is set for $18. Do we know yet about Coastal Commission?
Well, the beach parking at 18 is what the body adopted last year.
Yeah.
And so there's no change in that rate. Every time we've been asked, the answer is still the same, that we're working on all the responses that the Coastal Commission is requiring of us to make the application complete. So we're still working on it. It's just not there yet.
Okay, I had another question. That was about, I saw that swim instruction was going up from 47 to 75. Is that for 2 weeks of swim instruction?
I would like to defer the response to that question to Marine Safety Chief Joe Bailey.
Okay.
That's for a 2-week swim lesson, so it's 9 meetings. So there's the second Friday isn't included. And we do that in case we miss a day somewhere in there for a holiday, 4th of July or anything. So we have 2 weeks to get 9 lessons.
Okay, I understood this summer we were doing 1 week lessons. I just wanted to
That's correct. This summer, since due to the shortened summer with the school district, we're doing 6 weeks of 1 week lessons, and that's the 6 weeks of summer. This price, so the swim lessons, same thing with the junior lifeguard program, won't affect this summer because those lessons have already been paid for. Junior lifeguards have already been paid for, and so these prices will affect actually next
summer.
summer's.
Okay.
The change is in mine, only because they've been paid already.
Okay. Yeah, and I see that you're raising the price on the gardens. Okay, and these fees don't have anything to do with the what we were talking about, helping community groups with the grant process. That's not included in these fees. Is that
Well,
correct?
the fees in the fee schedule as presented would be the fee that was waived for those nonprofit requests that come in. So
if we're not waiving the fee, then they are. I'm not sure I understand.
So let's just say they come in for a special event permit, and we've partnered with a community group to waive the fee. So instead of it being I'm just using a number, $129 that we're waiving this year, next year we'll waive $135 or whatever the new rate is.
Okay.
So if we're currently waiving, we will continue. There's no change in what the city has done in the past.
So this isn't a decision about whether we will have police support or whether we will. This is just fees. It's not.
Correct.
What? Okay.
Right. This is our citywide cost recovery schedule. And Councilwoman Starsik, you also mentioned the false alarm, and I just wanted to highlight that because it is something that's changing significantly. And the reason it's changing is because when these alarm permit fees and false alarm charges were adopted many, many years ago, it was a very different environment than we're in now. And in discussions with the chief, they now automatically deploy 2 police officers. and we have only been recovering for less than one. The city allows 3 false alarms, and then after that, the entity that creates the false alarm is charged. So we've been receiving multiple false alarms from a particular business in the city, and they're only paying $55 or $200 for those alarms, and it takes 2 of our officers off the street automatically. And so this is a way to recover the actual cost of those services.
Okay, thank you.
Vicki, have you already factored these into tonight's budget?
Yes, as indicated in the staff report, the revenue production from this will be approximately $300,000 in the breakdown.
But you've
240 and
already...
60. It is in the budget as proposed.
So it won't be an additional $300,000?
That's correct.
Thank you.
I had a quick question on the, back to the beach parking lot. So is that in our court or is that in coastal court? I'm not.
It is in our court at the moment.
So I think the public has, doesn't have a grasp of all the needs and information that we're talking about. Is there any way you could just give us a little briefing on that? Because it seems like a lot of information, because it's been a lot of time.
It is. So
about
I
this
can.
12 months ago for this last year, right? For this past year.
We have been
and now,
working on it.
Is there an end in sight, or is there a timeline, or how do you?
I would actually like to turn that part of the discussion over to the interim director, Crystal Landavaso, but know that it took Coastal quite some time to review the application and then what they're asking for us.
So the Coastal Commission, in reviewing our application, additionally, they deemed the application incomplete because what they're requesting at this point is a very detailed history on all of our parking programs, all of our parking fees, essentially from the city's inception to this point now and what we're proposing. Additionally, they are asking for all of the surrounding cities for information from there. They want detailed information as to what the funding from the Tidelands programs, any fees that are collected currently from parking. They want a lot of additional background history that we've been spending a lot of staff time trying to allocate, break down, and then get ready. We are at the tail end of that, thankfully, so we're expecting to resubmit to them soon, but it has been a very daunting task to put research and put it all together.
All right, thank you. Is
Do
there
we have a
motion?
time when we think we might be ready to resubmit?
I'm hoping within the next month we'll have everything ready to resubmit. At this point, it's the compilation is there. It's sort of ironing it out so that we're answering the questions and we don't have Coastal Commission send it back to us.
Okay.
Okay.
Is this a public hearing?
It is on the agenda.
Yeah, are we, did we open it?
We opened it before we started discussion. But
Oh, okay.
I'll sit back down. You just tell me what to do.
Where are we?
We're on I.
I thought you already closed the public hearing.
Yeah.
I didn't, I'm sorry, I didn't hear any opening and close it.
If you want to open it, I don't care.
Yeah, we can reopen it if you have a comment.
Yeah, you
Go
can
ahead.
reopen it.
Yeah, we'll reopen it.
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize to council and staff. I didn't hear that, and I was probably trying to find some of the fee schedule that I'm sure staff diligently produced. I just wanted to talk about a couple of the fees and or taxes, because clearly we're in a revenue environment where we need to look at more things. I remember in 2014, we had the ad hoc local coastal committee along with the housing element. And that body's purpose was A, to deal with the housing element issue, which it did. And then I thought it would continue on to deal with an ad hoc local coastal plan. That coastal plan would then replace this very laborious process that we're going through with coastal, which to my limited understanding has now not only eliminated Main Street's in-lieu parking structure, so businesses are now really restricted even further, not only by the plan itself, but by the fact there is no more virtual parking. We've got a beach parking lot fee that's been in a lot of flux. And just a couple years ago, and I'm sure the finance director could correct me if I'm mistaken, but we actually lowered the user's utility tax 1%. And I would offer to the council, it is always easier to leave a tax where it is than to change it. I know hindsight is 20/20, but I wonder, as we talk about fees, taxes, and schedules, also about the transit occupancy tax. A decision was made with council about the number of, let's call them Airbnbs, or short-term vacation rentals. Those which are authorized pay TOT. I have another revenue-generating strategy for you. Isolate those short-term vacation rentals, which are not paying TOT or are not authorized, and either get them on a program and collect revenue from them, or close them down, or permit more, because I think we need to look at other options. And I know staff has done a very diligent job preparing this, and I would also add the transit occupancy tax. When we last increased it from 9% to 12%, it appeared that it was going to storm drains, when in fact, it actually went into the general fund. And we all know what happened with the storm drain disaster a little while ago, a year ago. So while we're thinking about fees and taxes, I would offer those items for your consideration as well. If we had an ad hoc local coastal plan approved, we wouldn't be in this situation. We wouldn't have to fight coastal about parking. We wouldn't be in the position if we hadn't given back that 1%. We would have more revenue. I don't know what that number is. I'm sure, again, the finance director does. But I offer those for your consideration.
Thank you. Public hearing is now closed. Do you have a comment? Do you want to make a motion?
No, I'd like to make a comment.
Please.
Rather than make a snarky remark about the Coastal Commission issue, let's just focus in on building permits and planning permits, since that's where I spent most of my life. Specifically, the new homes at the DWP site, have those building permits been figured into the increase in?
No, they haven't yet, because we don't have, the entitlements were just done, the new builder is now just approved, and so the next step, correct me if I'm wrong, Crystal, but would be to have plans and plans come in for review and then permitting process to start.
Correct. We don't have a valuation at this point for the development, so we can't set the fees.
Well, I know that Shea is a home builder, so we're not looking at lot sales, we're looking at house sales. And does that need to go to the Planning Commission for review in any way, or is it just staff?
The entitlements were already approved for the project. Coastal already approved the project, so it would just be administrative building plan check.
Okay. So it is conceivable that at least half of those building permits will come in this year. And they ought to be pretty substantial, because they're going to cost a lot. So maybe figuring in those permits might not be such a bad idea. At least we get closer than 144,000.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not sure that there's a way to determine what the potential revenue would be from permitting those homes.
Oh, I assure you there is. I assure you.
If we don't have the valuation, it would be hard to come out.
Well, you know it's going to be more than $1 million. So go from there.
Yeah. Well, your point is well taken. Whatever that building development generates will reduce the current deficit.
But we can't have a deficit after tonight. So
They're going to be building in 3 phases, isn't it, Crystal? So the first thing they have to do
is the park.
Right. And they told us it would take 6 to 8 months to build the park. So, yeah. So I think that just with that knowledge alone, I believe what they want to do is build one model home. We could get the permits for that.
Yeah. Well, that's only
But-
probably four,
but-
but
Huh?
2 or 4.
No, it's only one house. They're only going to
One
put one
model
up.
home?
Yeah. All they want to do is show the quality of the building because it's going to be a different project, and I don't want to take up a lot of time on this, but it's going to be they want to do it more of a custom thing, so they're looking for an architect that can do many different types of renderings. So it's not going to be their normal, here are 3 styles and pick one.
That's
So-
good, because that makes a building permit even more expensive.
Oh, good. Oh, good. So, but the park will take 6 to 8 months. They should begin, as soon as they get through with you with planning, they're going to start. So we're hoping within the month that it'll get started, and then 6 to 8 months on the park.
Okay.
So with that, do we have a motion for
So moved.
Resolution 6832? Second, please vote. Passes 5-0. Item J, adopt the operating budget and 5-year capital improvement program.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Again, this item will be presented by our Finance Director, Vicki Beatley. Vicki?
Thank you, City Manager Ingram. I do have a brief presentation and then one item for consideration. But before that, I just want to remind everybody that the budget is in a deficit position. The gap has closed, and I'll discuss that a little bit more. Talk about some of the primary changes that have gotten us from the about 477 that we were at the last meeting to the 145 where we are now. But I also, based upon the public comment, for clarification, I'm unsure where the message came from to the community groups that the city was cutting the budget, cutting those services, the collaboration from the budget this year. But to be clear, this budget includes all of those prior relationships and the in-kind services that the city has provided to the community groups. So there's no change in the status. As Councilmember Moore said earlier, we were merely talking about having discussions with those community groups on a go-forward basis to talk about if there's any room for perhaps some revenue coming into the city or ways to mitigate some of the expenses. So again, not sure where the message came from to the public. Appreciate that the community groups were here tonight talking about the concern that they have, but know that there is no intent in this budget to cut any of those current services that the city provides. So with that, thank you. And could I, in case there's any questions, I'd like to have Elena come over and join me. Thank you, Patrick, for giving up your seat. So then just jumping right into the presentation, if you wouldn't mind, Joe, next slide. So here's where we were from the perspective of the deficit when we completed the 2 workshops, about $477,600. So on the next slide, what you'll see then is now we're at about $145,200, still the gap in the budget. So most of the difference, as I indicated earlier, approximately $240,000 of additional revenue was identified in the cost recovery schedule, which the council has just previously approved. The discretionary was also cut from the budget, and that's $100,000. So with those and some other additional minor adjustments, we've been able to close the gap to $145,200. And that's the way the budget is proposed tonight. However, there's one other slide that I'd like to go ahead and pull up, because in discussions with, there's a different presentation from the senior transportation. So I'm bringing this slide back to the council tonight because in discussions with the team, there was no clear direction, at least from my perspective or from the others' perspective, that the council gave. I understand the council said, make some cuts, yeah, we like this, but there was 3 different considerations, and so rather than just make a presumption, want to have the discussion. So from the perspective of, are we looking at eliminating the Thursday shopper shuttle? Are we looking at changing the hours of the transport, the senior nutrition, or are we looking at changing the hours and days of the Dial-A-Ride program? So that's the only thing I need. However, the council chooses, that obviously any reduction will further reduce the existing deficit from the 145.
Okay, I know we had some comments before. Does anyone want to start the conversation now? Mr. Moore?
Want to go first?
Well, I think we all agreed that to eliminate the Thursday shopper shuttle,
Okay.
if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Well, I know that the Golden Rain Foundation Board will be taking up the cost of the $20,000 and put in their next budget, but that doesn't come until January because they're on January-December cycle. But that's just a clarification, okay? And then I'll get into more later.
So do you, Sandra, do you want to take then and just start it in January rather than start it in July? Would that help you?
That would be, that's what I was going to come up with when it was my turn to talk, but...
But you were talking.
I know.
It wasn't
I know.
your turn.
I can be abrupt like that. But the Thursday shuttle is pretty popular, and people like going to Main Street. If we could keep it until December and let them take it over in January, and then they can have it after that, and we won't have to reinvent taking that over.
I would go along with that.
The Leisure World, Tom and I are going Friday to a joint meeting, just kind of a lunch date, and talk about some of the things that are common between the two agencies, and this is one of them.
We're meeting with Leisure World.
Yeah, it's a meeting it's here, but it's with Leisure World, yeah.
So I think we also talked about keeping the nutrition shuttle. I don't believe that the shopper shuttle, the one that...
Thursday?
No, I'm confused about how many different programs we have.
I'd like some clarification on that one,
I know.
too. Yeah.
So I guess what bothers me about our senior transportation program is, first of all, we're duplicating a lot of what the county does. Secondly, we're providing everything from something really needed like nutrition shuttles and doctor's appointment shuttles, coupled with entertainment and, just riding around. So the nutrition/shopper shuttle that runs from 8 a.m. to 4:30, how is that? What is that?
That's the one that goes to the senior center in the morning, starts off in the morning because many seniors, what are you?
Michael.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. So the three programs that we have is the Dial Ride program. That's basically, it runs from 8 to 4:30. That's more of a taxi service, so that will come to your house or location and take you to any desired location throughout the city, plus 3 miles outside the city for medical appointments. The next program is the nutrition program. That's strictly just for taking the seniors to our congregate meal program, and that's run throughout our senior center over on the North Community Center. And the last one is a Thursday shopper shuttle. That one's the exclusive shuttle that runs from 8 to 4 Thursdays only to the north side of Seal Beach, and then also on the south side to the pier. And all programs are all widely used, very popular, heavily used programs.
So the Dial Ride, I think, is the one, Tom, that we talked about reducing to 3 days a week, because that's the one I think is most duplicitous with what the county offers.
Yeah, I think we were thinking Monday, Wednesday, Friday or something, and then the try out the OCTA shuttle on the Tuesday, Thursday.
I think maybe if we told staff 3 days a week, we wanted to pay for that and let them work with OCTA to see which days would work best with OCTA. Because I don't know frankly which days would work best with the county and which days would work best for us.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
So I guess at that point, the other thing we decided was that we were going to take Dial-A-Ride down to 3 days a week instead of 5. And then this, again, I'm sorry, Michael, I'm still confused on what the nutrition/shopper shuttle is, because I'm all for getting them to nutrition. I don't even see where the medical one is. What I want to be sure is that our seniors get to their nutrition time and that they get to their doctor's appointments. I think that is something that is a good service that our taxpayers can provide. If we're just taking them shopping and off to lunch and dialing a ride for wherever they want to go, in this economic climate, I don't think I could support that. So.
Correct. Just to clarify, the second program, which is the Nutrition Shopper Shuttle, so the nutrition program runs from about 9 a.m. and it concludes about 2 p.m. So during that time, seniors are getting shuttled to the congregate meal program. Outside those hours are for shopping. So if the seniors would like to go to Vaughn's or Pavilions or Target, that's where they would go.
Is that like on the way home from the nutrition program, or is that a separate run?
It's a separate run. That's kind of like a circular type. It's on a fixed pattern, so they could use that as well.
And the nutrition program's covered by the grant, right?
Correct.
Partially.
Partially, yes.
Can I have a refresher on the county program? Was that only for medical, or they could use the county program for what? Am I getting confused with another program?
So OCTA offers a program called Senior Non-Emergency Medical Transportation.
Okay.
And that's run by Abrazar. And Abrazar will run from, I believe, 6 a.m. all the way to 6:30 p.m. And they can go to any location as you wish in Orange County for any Seal Beach resident. So it is a duplicate service that the county has.
And it's medical? Okay.
Non-medical.
Oh, non-medical.
Correct. So these are trips that seniors would like to go for the shopping, beauty, haircut.
I was just trying to figure out if they needed, somebody who didn't drive needed to go to Ralph's to buy groceries. They can do that on the nutrition shopper shuttle early in the morning or after the lunch run is done?
Correct.
Or they can call the county and I'm trying to make sure that they can still get their groceries if they don't drive. We're not cutting them off from that either, so.
Well, we've got the part that bothers me is we're providing a service and the county is providing the service.
Correct.
And the county's actually providing a service for more hours than we are, and yet we're still paying the bill. So that's what I'd like to get rid of.
That's okay,
is the
and
duplicitous.
that service is not impacted, like, I mean, they'd be able to sign up, like ours is like, when
You
my
can't get
residents
on.
call, you
Yeah,
can't
you
even
can't
get
get
on.
on.
So you would be able, residents would be able to get on the county program?
Correct. We spoke with Joanne Jacobson with OCTA, and Abrazar has over 48 vehicles that serves Orange County, the north portion of Orange County, so there's no impact whatsoever.
But there is an application process on that one, so we'd have to advertise to our seniors that they would need to apply.
Correct.
You know what I would recommend is we actually hold meetings where we bring them in and help them get applied.
That's a good idea, because otherwise it can be
Yeah,
really confusing, I think.
Yeah.
And they're more than happy to do the outreach.
Yeah.
OCTA
I'm
would love.
confused.
I know. Anyway, Michael just said they're more than happy to come and do that with us.
Just for clarification, and Michael, confirm this for me, that we invited an Abrazar rep to come to the Leisure World City Working Group Committee meeting on Friday, just to start that dialogue with the Leisure World representatives.
Correct.
Excellent.
OCTA will be there this Friday.
Excellent. Okay, so where does that leave us then? Are we, we're going to try that out then 2 days a week and keep our duplicate service 3 days a week?
What I want to clarify is, are you talking 3 days for the full hours, 8 to 4:30? Because one of the proposals was also reducing the operating hours from 9 to 3.
I think that's what we had agreed with. Yeah, was the 9 to 3.
3 days, 9 to 3, a reduction, and then 2 days with OCTA?
Yeah, that's correct.
And then, Michael, you can help dollar-wise based upon the recommendations. So the presumption is that the Thursday shopper shuttle, if it's 20,000 a year, for half a year, it would be 10,000 savings that we're asking about. So if you could just summarize the savings based upon the discussion. The 10's easy. I need your help on the rest.
Okay, so from my understanding, we're going from 6 hours, basically from 9 to 3, 3 days a week. Yeah, if the back calculate how it's going to be. It's, I believe the last hourly rate was $48.75 an hour.
Yeah, it's 50.
50.
Yeah, it's about 51. I think it's 51.75, and contractually, I believe it goes up to 52.75 next year.
Correct.
if I
That's an
remember
hour?
That's per hour.
Correct.
Where do they have applications for that job?
And we provide the bus.
Yeah.
Provide the bus. Wow.
So let me give me about 5
Yeah,
minutes
well,
and I'll.
I had a couple more questions too, unless someone else has one before me. Go ahead.
I don't want.
Oh, did you have one? How many shuttles are running on a given day?
We currently have 3 in service.
So 3 are running around on a given day?
Correct.
And is there a cost per trip associated with that?
It's basically, we pay per hour.
Right.
Per hour?
Yeah.
There is a suggested donation on some of those services, which we rarely get donations.
Correct.
Well, that was my next question. Is there any way, and I'm not saying do it today or tomorrow, but to look into like a trip card fee type of thing, just to kind of help offset? I mean, I don't want to say that, start tomorrow, but in that discussion that you're having on Friday, maybe we can, offset some of the costs and propose it and see what type of information we can get back on that.
Mm-hmm. Historically, we've tried that before. That was a council motion back in, I believe, 2010, where we did some sort of credit punch card, and I believe people actually paid the city, and we did it as a pilot program, and it didn't really favor too well, and we canceled the program.
It cost us more money, as I remember, than what we were bringing in.
We refunded everybody's expense.
And the shuttle driver wages, what were you saying? Is there a fee?
It's about $51 an hour right now currently.
You were looking
an
for
hour.
something to do in retirement.
I am looking for and I know the town really well. And that's.
But just to be clear, that's the fee to the contractor, not.
Correct,
what
that's the
bus
fee of the
drivers make.
contractor.
Oh, darn,
That
Craig.
includes maintenance of the vehicle and upkeep.
Insurance, all of those.
Insurance,
all of those
correct.
issues.
So is it out of the question to look at an Uber service or a Lyft in the meantime, not tomorrow, but something to just look at and evaluate and say, hey, we're paying 50-something bucks an hour or more, and we're moving this many people. I'm just.
Which
Thinking
program
out
are you
loud.
looking at? Are you thinking of the Dial-A-Ride?
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
the Dial-A-Ride, I think we already have the idea of the county picking up because they go from 6 to 6.
Right, well, we could still, cut it if it's, costing.
Well, I think we're planning on cutting it altogether if we see that the county works.
So incorporating the county for 5-day a week eventually?
Isn't that where we're going, Tom? We're just asking for a
Okay.
way to get them
So it's
started.
good to monitor that.
I want to
All
check
right.
with the residents and
Yeah,
see how
and-
how
Yeah.
it
Well, they're not
works.
going to like it at first, but we want to give them time to gradually break into using the county instead of ours.
Yeah, no, okay. All right, any other questions? Are you good with what you have?
Well,
guess?
on option number 3, under your summary, Michael, it says eliminate Dial-A-Ride and Shopper Shuttle and provide nutrition program only. So is that, I'm sorry to still be here at the top, the nutrition/shopper shuttle, but that seems to be the one that I'm kind of not understanding yet. Are you saying that it would save us $120,000 if we eliminated everything except the nutrition/shopper shuttle?
Correct. So
And we
no-
kept that, and then we get grants for that, is that correct?
Correct. So option 3 would eliminate the Dial-A-Ride and the Shopper Shuttle and the nutrition program. We would go back to the original contract that we started back in 2007 with the county.
Wow, we've really grown, haven't we?
It's been a popular program.
Wow, yeah. All right, well, I would like to make a motion, but I'd really like for Tom and Sandra to help me make sure I get this right. I'd like to make a motion that we bring Dial-A-Ride down from the hours of 8 to 4:30 to 9 to 3, and that we cut our service from 5 days a week to 3 days a week, while we analyze to see whether we can completely eliminate the program and see how the county program works in its place. I would like to keep the nutrition shopper shuttle and eliminate the Thursday shopper shuttle at the end of December. Did I get it?
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Can I just confirm, is this motion part of the overall operating budget motion language? Am I adding this to the end of adopt the operating budget 5-year capital improvement program CIP?
Beats the heck out of me.
Well, they're going to be, they're separate items, but I would suggest that you not hold the vote until after the public hearing.
Yeah.
So if you have the
Oh,
have the motion.
but
No public hearing's been open.
It is a public hearing.
It is a public hearing.
This is a public hearing.
we haven't
It's
opened
part
the
of
public
budget
hearing
item.
yet?
You haven't had you're still in your staff report, so.
Yeah, we're still on the stuff. report.
Okay, all right, I withdraw my motion, but ask that the clerk write it down because I'll never remember it again. Okay, thank you.
So are there any more questions or comments? With that, we'll open the public hearing. Please step forward.
I just had some simple suggestions because I heard the council mention Uber and like Uber Eats and things like that, and I thought they're my,
Name,
sorry,
please.
my name. Jonathan Waller.
Still?
Still, yeah. As far as the Dial-A-Ride or the nutrition meals go for the elderly, I was thinking of something according to Masalava when I spoke to her, if I remember correctly. She said there are 9,200 residents of Leisure World, and obviously they're not all living in their each own unit, so it's probably half that. So we probably have
No,
someone.
they are living in their own unit.
Oh, so that's 9,200 single people?
No, not all of them. There are 6,600 units.
Okay, thank you for that. So if there's 6,600 units.
66.
Yes, 6,600 units. And I was thinking of a service for meal replacement, which I use, which is extremely convenient and cheap, is like Amazon Prime, which also has a free adjunct, Amazon Prime Now, which delivers to you within 2 hours. It only costs $15 a month. And I thought we could either, if you do $15 times 6,600, that's $99,000, which is less than the 120. And then even if we didn't pay for the full $99,000, I thought maybe we could find some way to subsidize that for the elderly. Say at $10 of the 15, that would be $66,000, and that way we're not paying someone $55 to drive into the grocery store. Someone comes to their door and they can tip them if they so choose, and it's not related to us. So that's one of the ways that I thought might be beneficial, because even Uber Eats is slightly more money. So that pretty much covers your nutrition part. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Robert Goldberg, Seal Beach. Well, you almost made it through 4 public hearings without hearing from me. But I do have just something, just one question on the budget, and this is a question that I posed to staff this morning. And it doesn't have to do with the proposed budget for the year that starts in July, but it's a question regarding the year that we're finishing this month. Specifically, we've talked a lot about the budget deficit for the year coming being $455,000, and we're chipping it down But if you look at the budget on page 30, there's a line for revenues, and there's a line for expenditures excluding the CIP. This is all for the general fund on page 30. And if you subtract your expenditures from your revenues, you get either your budget deficit or your budget surplus. So looking at the year that's going to be ending in a few weeks, the way the numbers run right now is that it's anticipated that we'll have a general fund operating deficit of about $505,000. So it's even larger. The year that we're ending right now is going to have a larger operating deficit than the one that's projected for next year. And of course, the one we're operating, the one now, we didn't really do all the cutting and the fine tuning because as the year goes on, we didn't quite know what was going on apparently. But in looking at that, I think that number is very important. But when I'm looking at that number over the weekend, I think I may have found an arithmetic error, and I don't know for sure, but I did pose it to staff this morning, and I handed out my little sheet there, and basically I think there was a miscalculation of what our current expenditures are, an overestimation by about $666,000. And I appreciate I'm not being critical. There's been lots of changes, and it's hard to keep up with all these numbers. So I'm not trying to be critical at all, and I may be wrong, but I hope I'm right, because if I'm right, then for the year that's ending now, instead of being 505,000 in the hole, we would be to the good with a budget surplus for this year of about $162,000, because the swing here is $666,000. So I'd like to be right, and for staff to tell us, yes, we do have we started off the year thinking we'd have an $11,000 surplus, and it turned out to be $161,000. That'd be good news. The other impact of this is that this extra $666,000, well, where is that? I mean, it's not lost or anything. It's just would be in the reserves, which means that your undesignated, unassigned fund balance for the budget you're looking at would be higher by $666,000, which would raise it about, I don't have it in front of me, I think it was about 2.8 or something, so it would raise it into the $3 million range. So staff, I sent this to staff over the weekend. They've had a few hours to look at it today, maybe. So if they have been able to confirm the good news, I would appreciate that. And if I'm wrong, but I tried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Seth Eaker again. So first of all, I want to apologize to Finance Director Beatley. I'm the one who is responsible for sounding that alarm. It was, perhaps an overreaction on my part, so I sincerely apologize. And thank you for clarifying that. It's really precious to me, the nonprofits in our city. And I hope you understand where that's coming from, as I know you serve on a board. So my sincerest apologies. In addition, Sandra, I was not trying to disrespect, or Councilwoman Maslava, I was not trying to disrespect the Coastal Commission, rather simply take a larger look at some things that have happened in the past.
You're much kinder than I am.
Well, if only that were so. What I'd like to kind of focus on here is the fact that we do have a budget in deficit, and that we kind of knew that this was coming. And now that we're here and we don't want a reduction in services, I think we really need some out-of-the-box thinking on how to maybe look at additional revenues. And I know staff had done some work looking at potentially a farmer's market in Main Street, maybe creating some other business activity. I hope that that outreach and/or dialogue continues. I think that in addition to that, we really should look at some other ideas like that Airbnb, TOT, short-term vacation rentals, some of these other things that perhaps we're not capturing revenue, much like the oil revenue issue we just talked about, but that does involve existing staff time. I would amplify as well that our police, our OCFA, our marine safety and lifeguards really represent a lot of the core of safety for us. And I think as a citizen, and as someone who really is impassioned about this town, as I know all of you sitting there at council and staff are, because you would not be sitting there if you were not, that this is hard, and I understand hard decisions will need to be made. But let's try to collaborate. So I apologize to you, Councilwoman Dean Pro Tem. We talked a little bit about the issue of potentially the dialogue with nonprofits. I probably presented that poorly. So let's figure out a way together to move forward, and let's also try to think out of the box. I did have a specific question for staff, and that is, I recall about 2 years ago, and I spoke to Mayor Verapapa about this not too long ago, there was a contract about small footprint, large sales tax generators with a 1% kickoff to the agency that brought that forward. And perhaps, if that's still in effect, that's something that I know I, as a consultant, was interested in, and I believe it was clarified at the time of that presentation that anyone would be eligible for that. So it would be helpful, maybe, if I could hear from staff or council if that is still in place, and if so, is anyone eligible? Because that will certainly incentivize me at 1% for 20 years to try and find a small footprint, large sales tax revenue generator. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Does anyone want to address that last question on staff?
Well, I can just talk about a couple things. Mr. Goldberg did send the email today, and he was correct. There was a difference in the capital improvement program that was finally put together by Public Works and the dollars that were incorporated into the budget. So there's about 7 pages that were affected in that. It was all fiscal, the current fiscal year. So there was no impact to the budget projections for next year. It was a matter of the change that would affect next year is the beginning fund balance for the estimated beginning fund balance for next year. So no budgetary changes, number changes, and cash balance changes. And those changes will be incorporated into the final document that is published. But again, it doesn't change any of the projection for 18-19, only the estimates for 17-18.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
So what happens to that money then? Does it go into general fund? Does it stay in CIP? Is it earmarked somewhere? What happens to it?
It just affects the undesignated fund balance. So it helps that balance, which was smaller and getting smaller, become a little bit bigger.
And so it's one-time money again?
Well, no, I would say don't misclassify it as one-time money. This is actually because there's been so many changes in the capital improvement program. What happens is with the capital improvement program, those monies are sort of set aside for funding those capital programs, and the dollar differential was different. And so what happens is, if you look on page 30 of the budget, you can see this page called General Fund Analysis of Unassigned Fund Balance. And so the final number for 17-18 increases, which makes the beginning number for 18-19 increase. But these are cash numbers. So basically there's more money in the bank, and it's undesignated for any particular purpose, so we can use it.
But I mean, if we use it, we're spending one-time money. This is, we're going into savings to get it.
It's undesignated, so technically, yes, it is in savings. It's money in the bank. It's sort of, yes, our savings account, to answer your question. But we've met the requirements of the council for setting aside.
Right, no, I know that, yes, I know that, yeah.
Okay, it's not restricted funds.
No.
But it's like taking money And for operating, see, what bothers me is anytime we take out of savings and put it into operating expenditures, because next year, we're going to have the same operating expenditures, and we won't have the one-time money. So I'm just trying to figure out, what is this money?
It just starts our bank balance higher,
Okay.
basically, is what it is in the savings account.
Are
Pardon
you
me?
confirming the $162,000 surplus? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not confirming the surplus necessarily, but with the changed numbers, the revenue and is the same for the estimate. The expenditures are lower, so there's estimated to be more of a surplus. Yes, I'm not confirming the surplus because we won't actually know what it is until the last day the books are closed. But the estimated revenue, the differential between the estimated revenue and the estimated expenses is now greater on the revenue side.
All right. Any other questions? And on the second question?
To the best of my knowledge, that many years ago, there was a discussion about having some agreement of that sort, but there was no takers, and so no actual agreement was ever drawn up, and no documents were signed. And there hasn't been a discussion about it since then.
Is it still open, I think, is the...
Are we still amenable to it, I think is the question.
I would not be able to answer that question on behalf of the council. If the council would like us to take a look at some kind of an agreement like that, then...
Well, I don't think it was ever closed, right? It
Yeah,
wasn't
so
ever-
I think it would be up to you, Seth, to present something and let Vicki take a look at it and bring it to us.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I don't know that there was ever any agreement developed. I guess that's
There
what
was
I'm saying.
discussion and-
There was discussion, but there was no agreement developed.
No, but I mean, that would be the beginning of the process, to come to you and get it worked.
I think the easy answer is we could take a look at the contract that was approved by council and see what the current status is.
Okay. Any other questions? So we had a motion on the floor. Do we have?
Yeah,
to
Robin,
reiterate
that was only about the senior transportation. So,
About Resolution 6833?
no,
Okay.
I don't think so, was it, Craig?
No, it needs to be.
So we'll do two. We'll do the one on the senior transportation, because I am a little confused about what we're doing here, because this was when we had the senior transportation discussion, so I think this would be the appropriate time to make the motion. So I'll try again, Robin. And that is that we're going to diminish the dial-a-ride program to 3 days a week. We're going to take the hours down to 9 to 3. We're going to ask OCTA to come out and help with application process and try them for 2 days a week with the goal of, if it works, to eliminate our dial-a-ride program and just use the counties. We're talking about maintaining the nutrition shopper shuttle and eliminating the Thursday shopper shuttle after December 31st of this year. And I didn't know that I could get shopper shuttle out so many times.
Is there a second? I think there was a second, wasn't there?
Second. Second.
Please vote. Oops, sorry. Can you vote again, please? Sorry, but I pressed the wrong button.
About 60.
Passes 5-0.
And how much money do we save now? How much are we cutting into our deficit at this point?
Mr. Ho is still working on the calculation.
He's still
We know for
working
sure-
on it.
We
Are
know
you
for
an
sure it's
engineer?
10,000.
Do engineers do math?
We have a drum
He's an
roll.
engineer, he doesn't do math.
More than 20,000 per year, for
Yeah.
sure.
How much?
More than 20,000 per year, for sure.
Well, yeah.
Still
It'll take a little bit to get the actual numbers, the expected savings, other than the 10,000 for the Thursday shopper shuttle.
All right, then you need another motion.
We have the adopt resolution 6833, adopting the fiscal year 18-19 operating budget and 5-year capital improvement program. Do we have a motion for that?
I'll move.
Do we have a second?
Reluctantly, I'll move.
Good move. Do we have a second?
Second.
Please vote.
Can we have discussion just for a
Oh,
second?
discussion, sure.
I think it's really important that we talk about the CIP from a global standpoint, because other than things that we have in the specified budgets like water and sewers, when it comes to storm drains and things like that, it's coming directly out of savings. And people say, well, how did we get so low in our savings? Well, we got so low in our savings by resurfacing all of our streets and doing all of our CIP projects. That means capital improvement projects. It means doing our storm drains and our catch basins and all of that. The savings have gone directly into the improvements of our city. And if we cannot get control over our structural deficit, this is going to have to stop, because we're going to run out of savings and we have no way to reimburse our savings. So as we go ahead and approve this CIP budget tonight, it's a 5-year capital improvement program, and next year we may not be able to continue it. So that is how important this structural deficit is and what we're looking at in the future. So with that, that's all I have to say about it.
Any other comments? Okay, please vote. Item passes 5-0.
Can we take a break?
We will take a 10-minute break. Is that
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
recess for a 10-minute break? Thank you. You're up.
Thank you.
Did we vote on that last one? Yeah?
Yes.
Unless they ask it.
We're moving on, right?
Let me just, yeah.
Thank you all. Okay, before we begin, I'd like to call on Ms. Beatley for a quick update.
Thank you, Mayor Verapapos. So Michael Ho came back with the estimated savings for the changes that the council has made. The savings will be approximately $56,000. Those will be incorporated into the budget, so now the deficit is below $100,000. And I have every confidence that the city staff will do, as we always do, its best to ensure that dollars are spent wisely, and at the end of the fiscal year, depending on how things go, I know we'll come in within the expected budget.
Thank you. Great.
So does that mean we're done? We don't have to cut any more money?
We can go home
Well, we
now.
don't have to cut any more money from next year's budget, but we have some more money things to talk about later.
With that, we'll move on to new business. The City Council Fire Services Advisory Ad Hoc Committee recommendations.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Again, I'm going to turn this item over to Vicki Beatley, our Finance Director. Having said that, I want to recognize a couple people that are in the audience and available, at least one of them available to answer questions. Lori Zeller, who's the OCFA Assistant Chief of Business Services. As those of you know that have been attending the ad hoc committee meetings, is here in support of this item. Of course, Robert Acosta, our Deputy Fire Chief. And then Joe Kalmick is in the back row, who was District 1 appointee to the ad hoc committee, and also want to recognize Ron Blau, who's OCFA retired Deputy Fire Chief and a resident of Seal Beach, who's here tonight as well. So with that, I'll turn the item over to Vicki.
Thank you, City Manager Ingram. So we also tonight have a report of the Citizens Council Fire Services Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. And by way of background, earlier this year, the Fire Services Ad Hoc Committee has been meeting since earlier this year. The committee heard presentations from Long Beach and from Huntington Beach at the invitation of Seal Beach. Both agencies provided the expected costs and services and included startup costs as well, which in both cases were fairly significant. Additionally, Orange County Fire Authority was invited to present information to the committee regarding the existing contract. After all three presentations were heard, the project manager, Michelle Hernandez, created a presentation summarizing the costs of service. A copy of that final presentation that was received at the last committee meeting has been attached to your staff report for reference. At the final meeting, which was held on May 21st, the committee, with one dissenting vote, made the following recommendations: continue with Orange County Fire Authority and pursue revenue generation options to mitigate the ongoing cost increases. And as City Manager Ingram has stated, both Assistant Chief Zeller and Division Chief Acosta are here to answer any questions that the council may have about the committee and about the Orange County Fire Authority.
Great. I just want to say, and thank you to the council members that were on the committee members, the staff members, and all the fire departments that did a really great job collaborating and coming together with this decision. I think it was a really worthwhile effort, and it's come to a head now. And if you have any comments or questions, we can move forward. Do you have any comments or questions?
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward?
It is what it is, and we have, whatever we were able to receive in terms of costs from the other two cities was very enlightening and concerning, because it didn't answer my preconceived notions.
Right.
And so it made it pretty difficult, actually, but I think we did a good job.
I do too.
Vicki, do we have that slide to put up for the audience on the comparison? Because I think it's really important for everyone at home, as well as everyone here that didn't go through the exercise, to actually see what came out. I actually went into the process believing that we were a donor city, and that that we would be better off either going back to our own fire department or contracting with a different fire service. And when Long Beach came and they painted the picture for us, it looked like, well, maybe still we could, before we got all the finer figures. And Huntington Beach graciously still came even after they did the analysis, and the analysis came out that there was no way they could match OCFA. So then we had an analysis done, what if we did our own? What if we went back to our own? And that analysis came back really high also. So hopefully they can put it up just so that we can kind of go through this a little bit, because I think everyone should see the numbers and some of the things that we grappled with. Because the fact is that public safety is very expensive, and firefighters and paramedics and ambulance service, none of it's for free. So being that we now know that we have got the best deal that we're going to get, we now know that it's not going to be any cheaper next year or the year after. And if our sales tax remains as flat and not reaching even to what the CPI, thank you. At least I didn't do CUP this time. We're going to continue to get into this public safety hole. So I think it's worthwhile, maybe not worthwhile because we may not be able to see it.
I've seen them blow it up.
The annual cost line is.
So, yeah, let me just go through the bottom line, which I think is really important. The annual cost, and just quickly, we looked at 3 firefighters per unit, which is what we had, just, I don't know how long ago, what, Robert, a year ago? I don't know, months ago, I don't know. Huh? Half a month? Half a year? Sorry. Huh? 8 months ago, we had 3 firefighters per unit, and we have gone to 4 firefighters per unit, and because of the way we were staffed, it did not cost us any more money. Long Beach also does a 4 firefighters per unit, and there's a very long, complicated reason for it, mainly having to do with fire safety for the fire in case of a fire. And then OCFA, who is now running a 4 firefighter unit, and Huntington Beach runs a 4 firefighter unit. So we were looking at all 3 services, apples to apples, and the cost for Long Beach would have been $5,700,000, Huntington Beach $5,800,000, and OCFA is at $5,163,804, no cents. So if we did our own, it jumped way up also to $5,600,000. Right now, the way we've got our contract is we have a cap on it, and I'd really like to ask Lori to come up and explain the cap, because so many times we've heard it's not really a cap, but yes, it really, really is a cap. So I think we should discuss that. I also want to make it clear and have you say it one more time, because you've told me 3 times, but I think it's always worth hearing again. Are we paying for helicopters that we don't use? And anything else that you think that you would like to tell us? I'd really like you to tell us how you got the message on cost cutting. So other than that.
Sure thing. Thank you, Councilmember Jeton. So we do have a 4.5% cap. It is a definite cap. Your costs will not go up more than 4.5% per year. What has confused that is there is what we call a recapture bank. So if our budget costs go up more than 4.5% in a year, we will bank that extra, say it's 5.5%, we'll put the 1% in the bank. And the following year, if our budgetary cost increases come in under the cap, at that point we're going to increase it by 1% additional more. It's a way that we can stair step up closer to full cost recovery. We never go back to the prior year.
But
where
don't
our
we have
costs
to hit
exceeded the cap.
7% or something?
There is a 5-year provision where we look at the last 5 years, and if funds have accumulated in the bank in excess of 7.5%, then there's the potential to trigger an additional increase. We are in the 4th year of that 5-year window right now. We're not even halfway to that 7.5% trigger. So the first 5 years of the JPA, that did not get triggered. That's not going to get triggered in the second 5 years. So you are protected by that 4.5% cap. You have been well protected by it. Our 10-year average has been under 3%, 2.92% is what you've actually seen in increases for the past 10 years. Let's see.
Did you say that number again then? Our actual increase has not been 4.5, it's been?
2.92% averaged over the last 10 years.
Okay, 2.92 averaged over the last 10 years.
Correct.
Okay.
The last thing I'd like to mention is you talked about the cost comparisons and that we did come in lower than all the other agencies. Our actual cost for your 4-person staffing was even lower than the 3-person models proposed by the other agencies. While it was a fairly recent transition that we went to 4-person engines, even when there was 3-person engines, that was augmented by a 2-person medic van. So you have always had that higher level of service. So even these lower cost comparisons from the other cities, not lower than our cost for your 4-person staffing, but their lower proposals were a lesser service than what you're getting from OCFA. Happy to answer any other questions.
Helicopters?
Helicopters, yes, that is excluded from the cash contract charges. It's funded by the regional services, property taxes that we get. You can look, we give you detailed spreadsheets every year when we give you your charge, and the element of any increases for the helicopter program are deducted out of those charge calculations. So cash contract cities get the benefit of that, they don't pay for it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I think, just so you know, it wasn't a result of the services. We really appreciate the services that we get from you and your staff. It was just a, economic exercise for our city.
Understand
so thank
completely.
you.
Thank you.
And great job as usual. Do you have any questions?
Yeah. Thank you for being here. We all received a letter from Stephen Wontrobsky. I know you've heard from him quite a bit, mentioning that potentially each city has some liability. He mentioned Seal Beach has a $7.8 million unfunded liability. I just was confused by that. I wonder if you could clarify.
So he speaks to our pension liability and whether or not our individual member agencies are responsible for our pension liability. The Joint Powers Agreement that you all are a part of as part of OCFA clearly states that the individual members are not liable for OCFA's pension liability. OCFA is liable for that. Now, he would argue that should OCFA go completely belly up, bankrupt, no longer exist, the OSERS has opined they have the ability to subrogate to the individual member cities to try and collect that pension obligation. But as far as an individual member withdrawing from OCFA, the Joint Powers Agreement says you are not liable for that pension liability. That aside, we have a really aggressive pension paydown plan. We've been working on it. We're in our 5th year right now, and we've made tremendous progress. We took our plan from a 65% funding level to approaching 79% with the most recent actuarial study. So our goal is to pay the pension liability off before we would ever look to lose any members. Hopefully we don't ever lose a member, but we would like there to not be any pension obligation if and when that might occur.
Okay, thank you. And for calls that are non-Seal Beach related, like does OCFA factor those calls in your cost calculate for calls that are in Rossmore or other areas? How does that work?
So Seal Beach joined the fire department, Orange County Fire Department, before OCFA had even formed back in 1982. The base charge for Seal Beach was set based on a formula in place way back at that point in time, and since then has grown with our budgetary cost increases. So call volume within any individual area or city doesn't factor into what your charges are. It is simply what are the core salary and benefit increases that are occurring in our budget applied to your base service charge, which is why you're actually quite a bit under what our full cost of service today.
Okay, so
there is no rebaselining based on where calls are occurring.
Oh, so you don't look at the service calls as a factor of what you charge?
Also, thank you.
And with my appointee brought up that a lot of the calls in our city are medical related, about 80 to 90%. And is OCFA looking at that as to maybe tweak how services are provided instead of sending the engine out for all of those, for every medical call to maybe an ambulance with paramedics?
I think I'll defer to Chief Acosta to answer that one.
Just so I can answer the question directly, what specifically are you asking?
I guess from a cost savings perspective, instead of sending the engine out for every medical call, 911 call, having a paramedic go out with a ambulance with 2 paramedics, or something to save money on the calls that are not fire related.
No, that's not a response model we're looking at. The way that we respond is the way right now is with the paramedic engine in an ambulance. There's no mechanism in there for a paramedic van to respond. We don't have paramedic vans in Seal Beach. The ambulance response is a civilian ambulance that responds with the paramedic engine.
I guess my question is, if there's cities where there's more of a medical need, like we have Leisure World, and it might be quicker actually to send a paramedic van with 2 paramedics versus the whole fire engine unit. Has OCFA looked at that?
Well, we had a paramedic van in Seal Beach for a while, and it's not quicker, it's the same response time, but what you lose is redundancy in coverage, because that 4-man paramedic engine can send 1 paramedic to the hospital and still keep the three people on the engine in service to respond to that second call. When you have a paramedic van, you lose that redundancy, and that second call is where you're vulnerable, where there's going to be a much longer response time. The 4-man paramedic engine is definitely more efficient globally, or in the big picture.
Robert, maybe if I could, just to reiterate Councilman Moore's question, I think the question might be, has OCFA ever looked at a staffing model of utilizing paramedics on a private ambulance in lieu of dispatching paramedics on an engine for calls for service? And from what I heard you say, the answer is no.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Okay. Yeah, we've not looked at that.
Okay. If Irvine pulls out completely, will that affect any contract?
Spend a lot of time talking on this one. So your contract is protected under the JPA provisions that says you pay for the services that are assigned in your city. Your price is protected by the annual cap and the cost methodology in the JPA, and the Joint Powers Agreement does not allow us to change those terms during the pendency of the term of the JPA. So we can't change that between now and 2030. So whether a city like Irvine or any other city should leave OCFA would impact our revenue, but it's not going to impact the price that we can charge to a city like Seal Beach. When I talked about our pension paydown plan, we've been really careful in building strong financial plans. We don't want to lose Irvine. We don't want to lose any of our cities. They're all important to us. But in that worst case scenario where we could lose a city, we're prepared for that, and we're not going to disrupt your service.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Is he done?
I'm not
Are
done.
you done? I
I'm
think
sorry,
he's
Tom.
still.
Well,
I didn't see the second page.
I just, I wanted to thank the fire committee, specifically Michael Maranta. He really looked at all these details. But I do think that it makes sense to stick with OCFA after looking at the financial aspects. And what I would like to recommend as part of the motion is to look at this again in 2025, a committee that looks at again at the fiscal aspects of this. So, yes.
Okay, it's not a motion. I think it's just direction, correct? It's not so but that's a good suggestion. I guess we can put on the table. Okay, so it is a motion.
If there is a motion.
Okay.
Why don't you make the motion?
Okay, I'll make the motion to approve OCFA, but also form a committee in 2025 to look at the financial aspects once again.
Second.
Please vote. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
I still had a question.
No,
Is that okay?
of course, of course.
In the staff report, it says the annual costs include a service charge, vehicle replacement costs, and station maintenance costs for both of our fire stations. Cash contract cities must also pay for OCFA required capital improvements to city-owned stations or facilities. And I was just asking about, are we going to get something on Station 44? I mean, I heard something about possible modifications. Is that going to be an additional cost to us in the future?
So the added sentence in that part of the staff report talks about we've never triggered that provision in the JPA. So when we see that there's a need for capital improvements in a cash contract owned station, we will talk with the city about the need. We'll try and work with you and try and get it added into your budget process. We have never used the trigger that we can mandate you to do that. It's your budget. We're going to try and work with your timeline. We'll even talk with the city about trying to carry financing for you if it's a badly needed improvement. But no, we're not going to impose that on you.
I wondered if there were more surprises, so thank you.
Thank you. No more questions? Please vote.
Thank you.
Item passes 5-0.
I'd like to thank Joe Kalmick for his work on the committee. Joe, thanks. You did a great job, and I think we were really dependent on your expertise, so thank you very much for serving.
And I'd also like to thank Tom Thomas for all his work and input, too. Thank you.
You know, all of the committee members did a fine job. They were very conscientious, asked great questions, and I think we came to the right solution. And I appreciate all their work.
Yeah. Thank you all. That was great. Okay. Moving right along, we have our path to fiscal sustainability.
Yes,
Item
Mayor,
A.
thank you. Again, our final item tonight will be presented by our Finance Director, Vicki Beatley. Vicki?
Thank you, City Manager Ingram, and I think this is the last time I'll be saying thank you, City Manager Ingram, this evening. Mayor and members of the council, this is the final item, and just a brief background before we open up for discussion. So as the budget was prepared this year, staff identified significant challenges associated with balancing the budget, as you're all aware, and based upon the earlier action this evening. In fact, the fiscal challenges have actually been being discussed since the budget adoption last fiscal year, where staff started to bring to the attention of council the challenges that we're going to be facing in an ongoing basis. Key revenue sources have remained flat or have actually declined more than we had anticipated, specifically the utility users tax. We were expecting a decline from the reduction, but there's been further decline based upon some other developments that are in the industry. So those key sources, sales tax and utility users tax, have remained flat or declined. And also, as noted in the staff report and as we have previously discussed, part of the reason why we were able to close the budget gap in the current fiscal year is because of one-time revenues that are coming in, expectation from reimbursements for the PIER project, for example. And in the current fiscal year, we've had some litigation that has actually helped us to bolster some of the balances. So the staff report identifies several items for different ways of generating revenue, and they are all listed there for consideration. I will tell you just right off the top, the most obvious significant increase in revenue to the city would be a sales tax initiative. And just kind of general ballpark figures, for example, if we were to look at a 1% sales tax initiative, which is a full 1% on top of what we're already getting, then we would expect somewhere in the neighborhood of about $3.6 million in revenue. We would actually have some estimates that can be done by our sales tax consultant, HDL, to help us come up with some better numbers, but just sort of back of the envelope, we can expect right now about 80% is what my estimate is of the current sales tax. So what we're looking for tonight is for the council to provide direction to staff. And if you look at the items that are listed, and it's almost as though one of our members, Mr. Eaker, is staying here and has read ahead, but the items that we've listed on this item and that we've discussed at various meetings, sales tax, parcel tax, the transient occupancy tax, utility users tax, a fire assessment charge, adding meters to the municipal lot at the fire station. By the way, meters on Main Street were also discussed, but at all of the parking town halls, that was quickly put to bed as an option that we weren't going to take on in the comprehensive parking plan, but we've not lost sight of that option. We've also discussed perhaps allowing short-term rentals, opening up the moratorium. The Proposition 218 concept that we discussed earlier in the budget process relating specifically to the street lighting district, street sweeping, and tree trimming, pursuing full cost recovery for all user-based services. The cost recovery schedule was adopted earlier this evening, and we discussed at that time the council's goal to have a cost allocation plan updated in the next year, and also economic development. Various forms of economic development have been, ideas have been thrown around from car dealership. Mr. Eaker brought up the low footprint, high revenue business models that's listed there, a shop local campaign that staff has actually talked about. And it's not just shopping local The example that was given was, we have a Target in the city of Seal Beach. So you can sit on your couch and order online and pick up at the store, unless you sit on your couch, shop online, and specifically tell them to pick the item from the shelf and have it delivered, have it ready for pickup at the store. That revenue still doesn't come to the city. So there's some nuances out there. Shop local, come to Main Street, shop local, support your local, your businesses. Partnership with the chamber would certainly be one of those key ideas that we have. And other economic development ideas, perhaps hotel development over at the golf course, or just some other ideas. So these are not anything that are set in stone. These are just a reminder of some of the different ideas that we have discussed in various meetings over the last year, actually. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but certainly open it up to the council for discussion and consideration, and we are looking for direction.
Okay. Do we have any comments or questions?
I do, but let somebody else go first. I have some.
I just have a couple of quick ones in the beginning and maybe at the end. Which ones can we do tomorrow?
We already turned that one down.
Well, we can do, the easy answer is we can do them all tomorrow.
Right,
Some of them will take longer to get done because some of them will require bringing a ballot measure forward. But we could hire a consultant to help us with the Proposition 218 for the street lighting district, street sweeping, and tree trimming tomorrow. We could start our cost allocation plan tomorrow. We could add meters to Main Street. Literally, I mean, it's not Main Street, sorry, to the lot by the fire station, sorry. We could do that as quickly as we could order the equipment. So the reality is, any one of those things we can start tomorrow. It's just a path to getting us where we need to be.
Okay. Any other questions?
On the sales tax increase, how long can we get that? Could we possibly get that on the November ballot?
Well, I definitely would defer to those with greater expertise in the room, but talking collectively and the wisdom of the folks that are in this room that have experience with something like that, it would be a 100-meter dash. And if that's the council's direction, then that's the direction that staff will run until we hit the August 10th deadline and make sure that we get it on the ballot. There's a lot of things that need to occur for that to happen, but we would do our best to get whatever the direction is. If it's a ballot measure, we will do it.
Can the city initiate that without having any sort of a petition or, signatures?
Yeah, the city council can order a measure on the ballot.
Okay. Parcel tax, I'm not so sure about. I think it gets a little cumbersome because of the Leisure World issue. The TOT, it doesn't cost our community anything for that. It costs the visitor.
Right, and we get about $1,650,000 a year. So if we were to increase the TOT by 1%, it would add about 8% revenue, so it'd be about $130,000 or so.
That's not enough.
Part of the solution, but it won't solve the big picture.
Yeah.
Are we low on that tax?
Pardon?
Sorry.
Are we low? Oh.
Sorry about that.
It depends. 12% that we currently have is not the highest in the state anymore. Let's just say that. When the council adopted it back at the action, I think Mr. Eaker said in 2009 or 2010, somewhere around there, we were one of the highest in the state. And now the range that I was able to come up with, especially in this local area, are between 8 and 15%.
Yeah, but I'd be looking at top of the range.
Well, top of the range in Orange County, I just happened to glance at it, is the city of Anaheim, and I believe that they are at 17%.
They have a draw we don't have.
Correct.
Yeah, we have the beach. Anaheim doesn't have a beach.
Well, and they also have a business improvement district, which is a self-taxing entity that helps keep that area very pretty.
Yeah. Prop 218, now that doesn't exist in terms of paying for street lighting districts, street sweeping, and tree trimming, that would be added on to the 218?
Well, so right now, we have, for example, the council approved the assessment for the street lighting district. And because we haven't made any changes to that, the general fund has been subsidizing to the tune of $55,000 a year. The only way to change that assessment is to hold a 218, which is not a walk to the voting booth ballot, but it's a ballot, yes or no, that is mailed out to the ratepayers. And so if we were to do 218, we would be able to increase what we're putting on the property tax bill through the assessment to fully cover the cost. Same thing with street sweeping and tree trimming. So those were adopted by the city council by resolution, I want to say sometime around 1988, and those numbers have never been adjusted. Our current cost of street sweeping is about $96,000 a year, and we're getting about $39,000. So if we did a 218, we would be able to increase those costs that are put on to the utility payers' bills. Same thing with the tree trimming.
Right.
But those assessment increases would be limited to the actual cost of providing
service.
the service. So it's
And
it's
that
an
would,
increase, and it's certainly less of a general fund subsidy to all
Yeah.
those services, but it's limited to the cost.
Right.
so actually, 218 and pursuing full cost recovery for user-based, it really equates to that.
Correct.
We're going to recover some more of the money that it's costing for people to have a clean street and all of that. Okay. The short-term rentals, I don't think that it'd be worth it. While many people who do short-term rentals are very nice, they come quietly, they leave quietly, there are those few that will cost us more money in terms of police response than it's worth expanding our RBO or VRBO and Airbnb. I don't think that's worth it, and I think that should just be off the table. But in terms of sales tax, I'm a go for that.
If I could speak to the short-term rental for just a minute. So I don't disagree with you that it would bring additional headaches, but there is one option out there that we might want to consider is there are some services now that have come up. One in particular is a firm that we already use, HDL, and they help us with our property tax and sales tax administration. Well, now they have a monitoring service, and one of the things that service does is sort of monitor the VRBO and the Couch Potato and some of the other websites where you can, do room rental. Our challenge is we know we have illegal short-term rentals in the city, and we don't have time for anybody to monitor websites and for anybody to ensure that, we send out cease and desist notices, but beyond that, we don't have code enforcement that focuses on short-term rentals and those illegal operations. So that might be something that the council would consider, is having a service help us to ensure that there's compliance among the non-authorized short-term rentals and, to pursue that path.
Well, a couple of years ago, we had an issue when we were on the planning commission with that.
I was on the council, you were on the planning commission.
Yeah, it was a little crazy.
Little.
Yeah. And there's,
God bless you.
I don't know how you follow, who you've got to look at all of the internet stuff to find out who's doing it. You got to access the site and.
Well, actually, the software that HDL uses algorithms to come up with who might be having illegal rentals in the communities, and they've been very successful. So I have actually asked them for a quote because I've discussed it with the city manager, just making the council aware that there's compliance issues that are out there, and other than word of mouth, we hear about the illegal rentals.
That would be fine if we would get any revenue off of them, but we have a moratorium, and they can't make themselves legal
Right.
unless we change the code.
Except that we have municipal code compliance violations in the cost recovery schedule. And so we can cite them.
Yeah.
We're doing cease and desist, but we're not pursuing. So we can cite them, we can monitor them, we can do those other kinds of things.
And make them pay
up.
I think
the
Newport
TOT
Beach-
without having a conditional use permit?
Yeah, I think Newport Beach
As
did
part
that.
of the cease and desist.
The violations.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool idea.
I think it's a good idea.
Sounds doable.
Well, I get.
But council, if I could, I want to make sure there's not a perception out there that the simple solution is
Right.
put a body behind a computer and search on VRBO. It's much deeper than that, and Crystal can probably talk to, just in general terms, what the challenges are from a code enforcement perspective in order to be able to cite potential violators.
So right now, currently, our code enforcement officer is actually dedicating some time, particularly spring, summer months, to going online, going onto these websites, trying to find them. The difficulty is they're not posting their addresses anymore, of course, but we still try to figure out which ones they are, and we've been able to successfully identify some of them. But when we do go out and make contact and identify that there's a violation, they just change their listing to identify it's 30 days or more. And it's very difficult, if not impossible in some cases, for us to verify that they're not, in fact, doing 30 days or more. Believe me, we go through comments and we're looking at lots of different items, but there is a lot of difficulty in proving that the violation is occurring.
And it costs us a lot of money to do that.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe it's not a go.
Yeah.
Well,
Anything else?
we're back to the sales tax.
I just had a question about and I know I wrote this question earlier about the municipal lot. Do we not rent spaces for merchants there now? No?
Well,
I was just not understanding who parks there, and if we put meters in, are we displacing people?
It's a great question. So the merchants are entitled to buy merchant permits annually. And the merchant permits allow them to park in the municipal lot adjacent to the fire station as well as the beach lots.
Oh.
And if we were to put parking meters in that municipal lot by the fire station, we would still allow merchant parkers to park there with no fee. And as I was thinking about the question, it might actually be better for our merchant parkers because on the weekends especially, they're competing for spaces because that lot is a free-for-all. So if we put meters in there, people might think a little bit more about not parking there because they're going to have to pay, which would potentially free up merchant spaces. Not sure. The idea that from a revenue generation perspective, my presumption is it would be at least as much as the 3 lots on Main Street, which is about $120,000 a year that we may be able to generate. It just kind of depends on the turnover there.
And is that lot open, past a certain hour, is open for resident parking?
Yes, after, it's either 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. It's open to
And
permit.
that wouldn't change?
No.
It would still be, okay.
Yeah. Anybody who has a permit would be able to park the same as they always have been.
Any other questions? Shirley?
So, are we ready for a recommendation?
I think we're still making comments
Okay.
here, but I wasn't sure if Shelley was done.
No, I was
You can think of something,
but I
come
was,
back.
yeah, I was thinking, but it was again about the car dealership. I thought, last time I bought a car, they asked me what my zip code was, and so I was under the understanding that your city got your sales tax for buying a car.
Shelley, can you speak in the microphone?
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So if we had a car dealership in the city, it's actually from clarification from our consultant HDL with sales tax. It's the sales tax goes to where the deal is negotiated. So if the city of Seal Beach had a car max, everybody who came to Seal Beach and bought a car at the Seal Beach CarMax, that sales tax would go to the city of Seal Beach. With the additional, like Fountain Valley has the 1% transaction tax that they added on. So what happens when you have the 1% transaction tax is that regardless of whether or not you buy your vehicle in Carlsbad or Huntington or wherever the car dealership, that extra 1% transaction tax goes to the city of Fountain Valley. So there's like additional benefits, and that's why when I'm saying back of the envelope numbers about 3.6 million, depending on how many cars people from Seal Beach buy, that number may go up based upon estimations.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out if we were just hosting.
Leasing
a
is
party
a little
for
bit
somebody
different,
else, or-
and that's why we have actually talked about a Tesla dealership to draw some foot traffic in, and that's like where the deal is negotiated. Well, even though there's a footprint in a city, all of the deals are negotiated in Northern California, so that may not work out exactly how we planned, but for sure a car dealership would work out what we're talking about right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
How about in the back of the Rossmore Shopping Center?
Depends on their hours.
Anything else?
How many lights?
Councilmember Moore?
Have we thought about giving a tax incentive to try to get a dealership, or?
Well, we can, if that's a direction that the council wants to go. We do have one revenue sharing agreement with a particular business in the city of Seal Beach right now. It would just be part of the negotiation process, and any revenue sharing agreement would have to be discussed at a public meeting and approved by the city council.
How hard is it to do the Prop 218?
It's not difficult. It's a process. So depending on what we do, but essentially you prepare the analyticals, you send the information out to the ratepayer. There's a 45-day sort of commenting period. After that's over, then we have a 218 hearing at a public meeting, which would be here in the council chambers, and depending on how many protests there were against the rates, it would have to be 50%, is it 50% plus one?
Plus one.
Of protests to make the rate not increase. So, that would be a fairly large number in the city of Seal Beach. We'd have the 218 and then be able to implement the rates after a certain period of time.
And to clarify on the short-term rentals, would the HDL actually collect the money for the city, or they just pass information to our enforcement?
It depends on the type of contract that we have. There's multiple contracts, and one is including compliance, where they would actually have their code enforcement officer go out and do compliance on behalf of the city.
Okay, so it wouldn't burden our
Correct.
code enforcement? I think that's it.
Just briefly, the economic development looks like, we should be doing that anyway, right? We're doing that. And Prop 218, I don't see any issue with that. I think that's something that we should probably pursue. The adding meters to parking lot, if it's a consensus, I'm okay with that. If the rest of the council is. I like the idea of the residents voting for the tax, which is, if they want the service, then basically they have to pay for it. I think the TOT looks like it's long overdue. I don't know why we wouldn't want to raise that if it's been that many years since we even looked at it. But we can't have a ballot for every tax that's on there. Is a 1% necessary, or would a 0.5% be okay? Is that just too little or not enough, or how would that play into effect as far as
I think
making
we'd
it
have to.
0.75% or something.
Yeah, I think we'd have to look at the analytical, and just the idea, if we were just to talk raw numbers. So when we started with the budget process this year, we put together a budget that provided the level of service, was fully staffed in the needed positions, looked at operations, how we can provide the service to the residents of the city. We started at about a $4 million deficit. So if we're saying, then just kind of as a benchmark, that as Councilwoman Deaton mentioned earlier, that structural deficit, let's just say that that's the $4 million. So if I'm looking at an estimate, and again, back of the envelope, just me, saying we're probably generate about $3.6 million. Well, that's not quite the 4, but then we also have the final payment of the pension obligation bond, which completes in June of next year, and that's about 1.3. So that would put us, over the 4 million threshold if we're just using that for discussion. But then you have to think about the ongoing costs. And we've had many discussions about CalPERS and the future projections. And so, the reality is, Mayor, yes, maybe this year the 0.5% would be good, but then in 3 years or 4 years, where would we be? So it's kind of hard to say which one is better versus the other, just given some of the extenuating circumstances that we already know are going to be occurring in the future.
Okay.
I think there's the question, too, are we trying to add police officers?
Yeah, and that's not even.
What are we trying to do on public safety here? Right. Because I think this is about public safety when it comes down to it. It's easy to trim everything else, but we tried to trim fire and couldn't trim fire, and fire will go up again next year. We've looked at our PD and taken one-time monies to pay for a long-term investment. That's not going to work. I mean, we're going to run out of savings and not be able to pay for the police. So I think it's not just a matter of putting a finger in a hole. We need to ask people, what do you want more public safety? Mm-hmm. And I think we need to keep our eye on the ball. It's about public safety. It's not about putting our finger in the dike.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's the council's pleasure on these?
I'd like to make a motion.
Are we looking for a motion or a recommendation?
Pardon me?
Is it a motion?
We'd be looking for direction. But
Okay.
a motion will suffice.
Motion is
Okay.
great.
Yeah.
That we undertake the effort to increase the sales tax by 1% and place it on the November ballot.
Any other items on there that you'd like to?
Well, I think that's a big hit for people.
Okay.
And transit occupancy tax is good, but I don't know how prudent it would be to put 2 increases in taxes on one ballot. So I would just like to stay with the sales tax.
What about the Prop 218?
I wouldn't do it at the same time.
Okay.
Well, the ballot is in November to vote on sales tax. Then you can do the 218 anytime, can't you? So sometime after November, do the 218.
Well, may I suggest that if we're going to ask people to vote for a 1% sales tax, what we do is evaluate it if it passes and see where we are.
Yes,
and not just assume that we'll have to continue on with the revenue generation. I think we need to ask people to pay for the service they receive, which is our police and fire, which are going into the hole, and then see if that works before we talk about any other measures.
I could go with that initially. But I think looking at the 1% sales tax to do everything is a little short-sighted, but, I'll go for it.
Okay, do we have a second?
No second?
Second.
Please vote. Item passes 5-0.
So I'd like to thank our employees. I think that people don't understand how much the employees have done on their behalf. Back in 2011, 2012, when Jill and I first got started on this job, the first thing we did was pension reform. Never got much coverage. Nobody thought much about it. We knew we were in trouble. And the city employees stepped up. And Jill, you'll have to help me. What percent did they pick up on their of the cost?
Miscellaneous, 7%, and then public safety, meaning police department, 9% plus 3% of the employer's share, so a total of 12% for the police department.
And so our PD is actually picking up 3% of what would be our cost. And I don't think that people realize that the employees have been willing to step up. And we hear about salaries all the time, but I want you to know that our city employees are doing the best they can to help us out. So I think that tonight, with going to the people and saying our sales tax is flat, it is not keeping up with the CIP. In order to keep the quality of life, that which we want here in the city of Seal Beach, it's going to cost us more money. We have had the state take away our redevelopment funds and release all their prisoners on us. You can't have it both ways. So evidently they can, I'm sorry, because they did. So I think, I thank you, Sandra, for the motion to move this onto the agenda. I think there's one other thing that we should ask, and that is that we allocate some money to get it done, because there's going to be analysis and probably some professional services needed. Is that true, Vicki?
Yes, so what we can do is when staff's working on this item, because we'll need to bring it back to the council, as you know, to adopt a resolution to place the item on the ballot, we'll have some additional information in terms of what that would cost. Having said that, and after discussing with staff, it's going to take us at least 2 council meetings, in my opinion, before we can get it to you for further discussions, meaning that would take us into July.
All right, and then hopefully by that time we're ready to go, because it's got to get on it by August 10th. All right, well.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll adjourn the City Council meeting to Monday, June 25th, 2018 at 5:30 p.m. to meet in closed session if deemed necessary. Thank you.